Tonight we walk toward Angkor Wat beneath a moon that seems older than memory. In 1860, the French naturalist Henri Mouhot described the temple to European readers with astonishment, although Khmer people had never forgotten it. Much later, archaeologists from the University of Sydney used airborne laser scanning to reveal that Angkor was not a lonely ruin in the forest. It was part of a vast urban world, spread across canals, roads, reservoirs, shrines, fields, and neighborhoods hidden beneath the trees. The evidence is stone, water, soil, and geometry. Quiet evidence, patient evidence. And yet, when you stand before the temple in your imagination, one question remains strangely alive. How did human hands build this? So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And as the night settles around you, tell us where you are listening from and what the local time is where you are. Somewhere, perhaps, it is raining. Somewhere, dawn is already touching a window. Here, in the story, it is still dark, and Angkor waits. You are standing at the edge of a wide moat. The air is warm and damp against your skin. The scent of wet grass rises from the banks, mixed with old stone, lotus water, and the faint sweetness of smoke from a distant cooking fire. Insects hum in the darkness with a steady patience. The surface of the moat holds the sky like polished black glass. Across the water, the towers of Angkor Wat rise in silhouette. They do not leap upward. They ascend slowly, almost reluctantly, like mountains remembered from a dream. 5 towers gather in the darkness, shaped like lotus buds, worn by centuries yet still commanding the horizon. The central tower stands highest, calm and severe. Around it, the lesser towers form a pattern that feels deliberate, measured, almost mathematical. This is not just a temple. It is a mountain made by people. It is a city of stone arranged as a universe. It is also a question, built block by block, and left for you to answer. The mainstream record confirms that Angkor Wat was built in the early 12th century during the reign of King Suryavarman II. Scholars at major institutions, including Yale and Oxford, have long studied Angkor as one of the greatest construction projects of the pre-modern world. The temple was dedicated first to Vishnu, a major Hindu deity, and later became a Buddhist place of worship. That change alone tells you something important. Angkor Wat did not freeze in one meaning. It lived, shifted, survived, and adapted. But the first mystery is more physical than theological. You look at the stones. They are everywhere. They form galleries, towers, pavements, stairways, libraries, courtyards, doorframes, columns, and walls so long that the eye becomes tired following them. There are blocks that seem ordinary at first, until you notice how precisely they rest together. There are carvings so delicate that earrings, fingers, crowns, and strands of hair still appear beneath the dust. There are bas-reliefs that stretch along corridors like a slow procession of memory. No cranes stand above them. No steel engines grind nearby. No modern concrete hides behind the sacred face. Only stone, weight, planning, water, skill, and bodies. That is the unsettling part. Not frightening, exactly. Just humbling. You begin to understand that the absence of modern tools does not mean the absence of intelligence. It does not mean primitive guesswork, either. That old habit, the habit of underestimating ancient builders, is one of the quiet mistakes modern people bring with them. We arrive with phones in our pockets and forget that patience is also a technology. A quirky old tidbit sometimes repeated around Angkor concerns the stones themselves. Some early visitors imagined that the blocks were fitted so perfectly because secret bonding materials had been used, almost like a lost stone glue. The more sober explanation is less magical, but more impressive. Builders shaped, dressed, moved, and placed sandstone with astonishing discipline. Still, the idea of hidden stone glue refuses to disappear completely. It lingers at the edge of the story, like a village rumor carried through humid air. You step onto the causeway. The stones beneath your feet are uneven from age. Some are smooth where countless feet have passed. Others hold little pools of rainwater, reflecting broken stars. The causeway leads straight across the moat, toward the western gate. And that direction matters. Most Khmer temples face east. Angkor Wat faces west. Scholars still debate the meaning of this choice, and their arguments remain carefully unresolved. Some interpret the Western orientation as connected to Vishnu. Others suggest funerary symbolism. perhaps tied to the king's own afterlife. A few propose astronomical or political meanings layered into the design. The temple keeps its face turned toward sunset. That alone changes the mood. You are not walking into bright morning certainty. You are walking toward the last light of day, toward endings, toward royal memory, toward the place where power hopes to become eternal. The western entrance makes the temple feel less like a beginning and more like a threshold. Each step becomes slower. The night air grows heavier. Even the insects seem to soften their sound. Ahead, the gatehouse emerges. Its towers are dark against a sky beginning to pale. The carved stone lions beside the path sit with open mouths and weathered faces. They have watched monks, kings, soldiers, farmers, pilgrims, tourists, thieves, scholars, and children pass before them. They have watched empires vanish into footnotes. They have watched roots crack stone and rain polish the faces of gods. You pass between them. The first enclosure opens wide, and the full temple appears. For a moment, it feels as though the earth has become a diagram. Galleries form squares within squares. Towers stand at measured points. Pathways pull your gaze inward. The temple seems both enormous and controlled, immense yet disciplined. Nothing feels accidental. Even the empty spaces feel designed. This is where the hidden truth begins to stir. Angkor Wat was not built by miracle. It was built by organization. That may sound less romantic, but it is actually stranger. A miracle happens once. Organization must happen every day. Someone must decide where workers sleep. Someone must feed them rice and fish. Someone must track tools, rafts, ropes, elephants, timber, stone blocks, priests, sculptors, and royal commands. Someone must settle disputes. Someone must replace broken chisels. Someone must know when the rains will come and when the roads will dissolve into mud. A temple of this scale requires more than devotion. It requires a civilization capable of turning landscape into labor. It requires memory stored in officials, measurements, rituals, and routines. It requires the quiet obedience of thousands of mornings. In this way, Angkor Wat is not only a monument to gods and kings, it is a monument to scheduling. Very sacred scheduling, of course, because nothing says divine order quite like making sure several thousand workers receive lunch before the sandstone arrives. The thought is slightly ridiculous, but also true. Grandeur survives because someone, somewhere, handled the practical details. You breathe in the damp air. The first birds begin calling from the trees. Their notes seem small beside the towers, but they fill the space with life. A pale line of silver appears behind the temple. The carvings are still mostly shadow, but the edges of the stone begin to show. You notice how the temple does not reveal itself all at once. It withholds from outside the moat. You see towers from the causeway. You see order from the gate. You see scale from the galleries. You will see stories carved in endless motion. But now, standing in the first open court, you sense the larger rhythm. The temple is designed as a journey inward. Each enclosure draws you closer to the center. Each level raises you higher. The path moves from human ground towards sacred mountain. This is architecture as slow persuasion. It tells your body what to believe. Climb, and you approach the heavens. Cross water, and you leave ordinary land. Pass through darkness, and you enter a world arranged by cosmic law. The builders did not need loud explanations. The stones taught silently. Yet the most remarkable truth is not that Angkor Wat exists. It is that it exists so completely. Many ancient wonders are fragments now. A wall here, a foundation there, a broken column lying in weeds. Angkor Wat still gathers itself into a whole, even wounded by weather and history. It still holds corridors where footsteps echo. It still holds towers that catch sunrise. It still holds faces, dancers, warriors, gods, and serpents in stone. It still feels intentional. That endurance makes the question deeper. Not only how was it built, but how was it imagined? A person can lift a stone. A team can drag one. A kingdom can move thousands. But imagination must come first. Somewhere before the first block reached the site, someone held a vision of this temple in the mind. Not a vague wish. A plan with measurements, axes, levels, courtyards, alignments, towers, and sacred meaning. Before the stone mountain existed outside, it existed inside human thought. That may be the real wonder. The machine was not made of metal. The machine was the kingdom itself. Its gears were farmers, priests, architects, scribes, quarrymen, boatmen, cooks, elephants, water channels, calendars, and royal ambition. Its fuel was rice, its rhythm was command. Its purpose was to make the king's devotion visible, to place divine order on earth, and perhaps to persuade time itself to pause. You stand quietly before it. The moon fades. The sky lightens. Angkor Wat becomes less a silhouette and more a presence. You see the long galleries, the steep towers, the dark openings, the worn steps leading inward. The temple seems to wait without impatience. It has waited through dynasties, invasions, monsoons, neglect, devotion, restoration, and the soft clicking of modern cameras. And still, it asks the same calm question. What can human beings build when belief, power, labor, and fear all move in the same direction? Perhaps the answer is not hidden in one chamber, one inscription, or one lost tool. Perhaps it is spread across the entire landscape, in the moat that mirrors the stars, in the causeway that guides the feet, in the towers that imitate mountains, and in the silence between carved figures. You came looking for the secret of construction. Already, the temple suggests something larger. Without modern machines, Angkor Wat was built by another kind of machinery, a social machinery, a sacred machinery, a human machinery so vast that individual lives disappeared inside it, while their work remained in stone. And as the light grows softer over the ancient towers, you begin to feel that the largest temple ever built is not only made from sandstone, it is made from time. Your mind drifts from the moonlit causeway into the older heat of the royal court. The stones are not yet standing. The towers are still only in tension. The moat has not yet become a dark mirror for the sky. Around you, the land breathes with forest, rice fields, red earth, and water channels shining beneath the sun. The air smells of palm sugar, damp clay, cut grass, and smoke from cooking fires. Somewhere within this living world, King Suryavarman II begins to dream in sandstone. He is not dreaming as a lonely poet, although that would be very convenient for a softer legend. He is dreaming as a ruler. His vision must pass through officials, priests, surveyors, commanders, quarry masters, scribes, astrologers, cooks, handlers of animals, and countless workers whose names are no longer spoken. A royal dream becomes real only when it becomes an instruction. Records and inscriptions confirm that Suryavarman II ruled the Khmer Empire in the first half of the 12th century. Historians at major universities, including scholars connected with Yale and the University of Chicago, have treated his reign as a period of ambitious state power, military campaigns, and monumental temple building. Angkor Wat belongs to that world of authority, faith, and restless expansion. You can almost hear the court before dawn. Sandals scrape across wooden floors. Bronze vessels are set down carefully. A priest murmurs beside a lamp, while an official bends over a palm leaf record. Outside, horses stamp softly in the dark. Servants move with lowered voices. Because royal mornings belong to decisions that ripple outward, a temple is proposed, not a modest shrine, not a little sanctuary beside a village pond. This must be something larger, something that will place the king beneath the protection of Vishnu, and perhaps place Vishnu beneath the magnificent publicity department of the king. The gods are honored. Certainly, the ruler is also remembered. Ancient politics rarely misses a chance to look sacred while arranging power. The first lines must be imagined across the earth. Surveyors move through fields and scrubland, studying level ground, soil, water, and distance. They do not carry digital instruments. They carry ropes, rods, sighting devices, practical knowledge, and the patient intelligence of people who understand land through use. Their feet know mud, their eyes know slope, their hands know how water behaves when the rain arrives. A mainstream fact quietly anchors this scene. Angkor Wat is enclosed by a moat nearly 200 meters wide, and the outer enclosure measures more than a kilometer on each side. This scale required planning far beyond simple religious enthusiasm. Archaeological studies from respected institutions have shown that Angkor's builders worked within an advanced urban landscape, where roads, embankments, canals, and reservoirs connected sacred centers with everyday life. So the dream begins with measurement. A line is stretched. A stake is driven into the ground. Another stake answers it at a distance. The beginning is almost disappointingly simple. No thunder, no hidden beam from the stars, just men standing in heat, arguing about alignment, while mosquitoes demonstrate their own ancient empire. Still, from such ordinary inconvenience, one of the world's greatest monuments begins to rise. The king's vision must satisfy more than beauty. It must arrange the cosmos. In Khmer royal thought, a great temple could represent the sacred mountain at the center of existence. Its towers could echo heavenly peaks. Its moat could suggest the cosmic ocean. Its galleries could form ordered boundaries between worlds. You are not simply designing a building. You are asking the earth to behave like heaven, which is quite an ambitious request for a patch of tropical ground. Priests discuss the proper relationships of space and meaning. The central sanctuary must matter most. The approach must guide the body inward. The towers must rise in a meaningful pattern. The temple must do what power always hopes architecture can do. It must make authority feel natural, immense, and blessed. Yet the royal dream also depends on fear, not panic, not chaos, but a deeper political fear. A king knows that memory is fragile. Victories fade, alliances shift, officials betray, borderlands resist, rivals whisper. Even royal blood dries in the dust eventually. Stone offers something flesh cannot. Stone suggests permanence. Stone says, I was here, and the gods approved. Perhaps Suryavarman II understands this very well. Perhaps every great monument contains a quiet argument with death. You enter the imagining of the worksite as the sun rises higher. Trees are cleared, earth is leveled. Temporary shelters appear like a second city beside the future temple. There are racks for tools, pens for animals, kitchens for workers, places for storage, and shaded areas where supervisors mark instructions. The first sounds are not sacred chants, but axes, voices, ropes tightening, wood creaking, and someone complaining about breakfast. This is where grandeur becomes human. A young laborer wipes sweat from his neck with the back of his wrist. An older woman tends a cooking pot, stirring rice while smoke stings her eyes. A boy carries water in a clay vessel, trying not to spill too much before he reaches the workers. A foreman checks a delivery of timber and does not look pleased. History remembers kings. Temples remember everyone else in silence. A quirky tidbit sometimes whispered in guidebooks and local storytelling concerns divine speed. Some legends suggest parts of Angkor were built overnight by supernatural beings or celestial architects. The idea is charming, and honestly, rather flattering to the Masons. When ordinary humans build something too magnificent, later generations sometimes promote them into spirits just to make the achievement easier to believe. But the evidence points to long labor, not instant magic. The stones had to be quarried, moved, shaped, placed, and carved. Foundations had to be prepared, water had to be managed, food had to arrive constantly, workers had to be organized in seasons, especially around agriculture and monsoon rhythms. A temple this large was not a single heroic act. It was a repeated act, performed day after day until the impossible became visible. There's an open scholarly debate over how exactly royal labor was mobilized for projects of this size. Some historians emphasize corvée labor, where subjects owed service to the state. Others suggest combinations of skilled specialists, temple servants, regional obligations, and seasonal workforces. The precise balance remains difficult to reconstruct, because stone inscriptions often praise kings and gods more eagerly than they describe tired workers with sore shoulders. Still, pattern can be sensed. The king commands, the administrators translate, the villages supply, the workers endure. At the center of all this stands the idea of merit and cosmic order. Building for a god is not merely construction. It is devotion made heavy. Every block carries religious meaning, royal ambition, and physical exhaustion. The temple becomes a place where heaven and bureaucracy shake hands, politely, while pretending not to notice the sweat. You see Suryavarman II not as a statue now, but as a man inside a system. He may inspect models, approve plans, listen to priests, receive tribute, and issue commands that feel effortless inside the court. Yet outside, each command becomes a burden for others to carry. A royal sentence can become 1,000 aching backs. A sacred alignment can become weeks of clearing, leveling, hauling, and measuring beneath a hard white sky. The king wants permanence. The people give him time from their lives. This exchange lies beneath the polished beauty of Angkor Wat. It is not a reason to despise the temple. It is a reason to look at it more honestly. Wonder deepens when you allow the human cost to remain visible. The stones become more alive, not less. As evening settles over the early worksite, smoke rises from cooking fires. Frogs begin calling from wet ditches. The forest darkens at its edges. Workers sit with bowls of rice and fish, their muscles heavy, their voices low. Someone laughs at a small joke. Someone coughs. Someone stares toward the marked ground where walls will stand. The king's dream has entered the earth. It is still fragile. A storm could flood the trenches. A political rival could disturb the work. A mistaken measurement could haunt the design for generations. A shortage of food could slow the labor. Yet the idea has already become dangerous in the way great ideas are dangerous. It has gathered people around itself. It has begun asking the living to serve the future. Night comes slowly. The stars appear above the cleared land. The marked axes lie quiet beneath them. Ropes are coiled. Tools are set aside. The first foundations wait under darkness, not yet impressive, not yet famous, not yet visited by travelers with cameras and sunscreen. Just ground, just intention, just the beginning of a stone universe. And in that stillness, you feel the shape of the hidden truth. Angkor Wat did not begin as a ruin, a wonder, or a postcard. It began as pressure inside a kingdom. It began as a ruler's wish to bind himself to heaven. It began as labor summoned from villages, knowledge gathered from specialists, and sacred geometry pressed into warm soil. The temple was first built in the mind, then it was built in command. Only then could it be built in stone. For a moment, it feels as though the forest itself has been holding its breath. You are no longer looking only at towers and sacred walls. Your attention moves outward, past the carved galleries, past the moat, past the paths where pilgrims and officials walk with lowered voices. The temple remains vast, but the world around it grows larger still. Beneath the leaves, beneath the roots, beneath the damp green silence, there is another Angkor waiting to be noticed. Not merely a monument, a city. The ground opens in your imagination like a map slowly unrolled by candlelight. Straight embankments cut across the land. Canals glimmer between fields. Ponds sit in measured rows, some choked with reeds, some reflecting clouds. Mounds rise where wooden houses once stood. Roads stretch toward other temples, some still visible, others reduced to broken laterite and memory. The famous stone sanctuary becomes one part of a living body. Records and modern surveys confirm that Angkor was one of the largest pre-modern urban complexes on Earth. Research connected with the University of Sydney and other major institutions has shown a vast, low-density city spread across the landscape, with neighborhoods, reservoirs, roads, canals, shrines, and agricultural zones woven together. The stone temples survived because stone is stubborn. The wooden city vanished because wood eventually returns to the insects. That is almost root of history. It keeps the palaces of gods and loses the kitchens of everyone else. Yet you try to see them anyway. You imagine houses lifted on wooden posts above wet ground. Ladders creak under bare feet. Mats dry in the morning light. Smoke curls from clay stoves. Chickens scratch near baskets. Children chase each other along packed earth paths, while adults pretend not to be amused. Somewhere, a dog barks at absolutely nothing, fulfilling a sacred duty known to dogs across all centuries. The city beneath the jungle is not silent in its own time. It murmurs. You hear the slap of sandals on damp wood. You hear paddles dipping into canal water. You hear the ring of a tool being repaired, the thud of rice being pounded, the mutter of traders discussing fish, salt, fruit, resin, cloth, and bronze. You hear priests chanting from temple precincts, but also babies crying, vendors arguing, and someone asking where the good rope has gone. This is the hidden Angkor that monuments sometimes conceal. A great temple needs a great city behind it. People must grow the rice. People must catch the fish. People must cut timber, fire pottery, raise animals, carry water, mend baskets, weave cloth, sweep courtyards, maintain roads, and serve the rituals that made royal power appear eternal. The sacred center depends on ordinary hands. The divine world, as usual, has a surprisingly large domestic staff. You walk through a marketplace near one of the roads. The air is thick with smells. Fermented fish, wet straw, ripe mango, smoke, sweat, and crushed herbs mingle beneath the heat. A woman lays out clay vessels in a careful row. A man with scarred hands repairs a wooden wheel. A monk passes quietly, his presence softening the voices around him. Workers from a temple crew buy food, their shoulders marked by ropes and dust. No one here thinks they are living inside a ruin. They are living inside a mourning. A mainstream historical fact helps steady the scene. Angkor's power depended on its ability to organize water and agriculture across the floodplain north of the Great Lake. Scholars at institutions such as Yale and the University of California have studied how rice production, reservoirs, and canals supported large populations and ambitious building projects. The temple was not floating above society. It was fed by fields. Your gaze moves toward the great reservoirs. They are immense, rectilinear bodies of water, shaped by labor and ambition. Their surfaces catch the sky, but their purpose reaches into politics, farming, ritual, and memory. Water gives rice. Rice gives labor. Labor gives temples. Temples give kings the appearance of cosmic approval. The cycle is neat enough to make an administrator smile, which is always a little unsettling. At the edges of the reservoirs, people move in small figures. A fisherman checks a trap. Women wash cloth with steady strokes. A child balances on a bank, testing danger with the confidence of someone too young to respect mud. Water buffalo stand half submerged, blinking as if they have understood every empire and found it tiresome. The city is low, spread out, and alive with intervals of green. This is not a city of tall stone blocks pressed tightly together. It is a dispersed world of homes, orchards, fields, temples, ponds, and work areas. The sacred and practical lie close together. A shrine may stand near a path used by farmers. A canal may serve ritual movement and irrigation. A pond may reflect heaven while also attracting mosquitoes with excessive enthusiasm. A quirky fringe tidbit appears in modern discussions of Angkor's scale. Some enthusiasts have compared Angkor to a lost supercity, imagining secret underground avenues or vanished machines beneath the forest. The truth revealed by surveys is less theatrical and more remarkable. Angkor was immense without needing tunnels full of mysterious engines. Its complexity lay in the open landscape, disguised by trees, soil, and the quiet disappearance of wood. The jungle did not hide one lost chamber. It hid an urban pattern. That pattern matters because it changes how you understand the temple. Angkor Wat is not an isolated miracle placed in wilderness. It is the grandest stone expression of a system already capable of organizing space over miles. Roads connect power. Canals move water. Reservoirs store possibility. Villages supply labor. Shrines bind local devotion to royal order. The temple rises from a network, not from emptiness. There's an open scholarly debate about the exact population of Greater Angkor. Some researchers have suggested hundreds of thousands of people lived within the broader urban region, while others caution that density, seasonal occupation, and archaeological visibility make precise numbers difficult. The disagreement is not a weakness. It is part of how the hidden city slowly returns to view. One careful question at a time. You stand beside a wooden house as rain begins. The first drops strike leaves with soft clicks. Then the downpour thickens, warm and sudden. Water runs from roofs, gathers in ditches, spills into channels, and slides toward larger canals. Children shout. Adults lift baskets under shelter. Smoke from cooking fires bends low under the wet air. The whole city seems designed to endure this seasonal violence, but never entirely control it. Rain is both blessing and threat. Too little, and rice fails. Too much, and roads soften, banks break, and work slows. The people of Angkor live with water as a companion that must be persuaded, guided, stored, and respected. Their city is not simply built on land. It is negotiated with weather. As evening settles, lamps appear one by one. The great temple glows faintly in the distance, its towers darkening against a bruised purple sky. Around you, the wooden city continues its ordinary life. Rice is served. Tools are set aside. Monks pass through shadows. A mother calls a child home. Somewhere. Officials discuss quotas, repairs, deliveries, and offerings with the weary seriousness common to all paperwork in human history. The sacred city sleeps in layers. At the center, priests tend rituals. Around them, artisans sharpen skills. Beyond them, families cook, trade, plant, mend, and dream. Beyond them, fields drink rain. Farther still, roads lead to provinces, forests, quarries, and borders where royal power becomes less certain. You begin to feel Angkor Wat differently now. Its greatness is not reduced by the vanished city around it. It is enlarged. Every tower implies a road. Every carving implies a workshop. Every ritual implies a field of rice. Every royal vision implies someone carrying water through mud at dawn. The jungle later covers the houses first. It takes the posts, the walls, the baskets, the roofs, the laughter, the quarrels, the market smells, the little repairs, and the ordinary evidence of being alive. Stone remains because stone is arrogant. Wood leaves quietly. So the future mistakes the temple for the whole story. But now you know better. The largest temple ever built without modern tools was never alone. It rose from a city whose true size was written not only in walls, but in water, labor, food, roads, and human routine. Beneath the green silence, Angkor was breathing all along. In your ears, the echo changes into the dull strike of stone against stone. The city's breathing fades behind you, and the world becomes rougher, hotter, and more exposed. You are standing near the sandstone quarries far from the temple's finished elegance. Here, there are no polished dancers on walls, no serene towers lifting like lotus buds, no galleries cool with shade. There's only rock, dust, sweat, and the heavy patience of the mountain. The sacred mountain is not yet sacred. It is being cut apart. The stone that will become Angkor Wat begins as living earth, still joined to the hills. Quarry workers study seams and faces in the rock. Their hands move over surfaces that are not beautiful yet, only possible. They search for the right grain, the right sound, the right resistance beneath the tool. A poor block can crack at the worst moment. A good block can survive a journey, a wall, and 900 years of rain. That is a demanding job interview for a rock. Archaeological research has confirmed that much of Angkor Wat's sandstone came from the Kulin Hills, northeast of the temple. Studies by specialists at institutions in Japan, Cambodia, and major Western universities have traced quarrying and transport routes through river systems and canals. The blocks were not simply dragged from nearby ground. They moved across a carefully organized landscape, shaped by water, labor, and planning. You feel the morning heat gathering early. Dust clings to damp skin. The smell of fresh stone hangs in the air, dry and mineral, mixed with resin from cut timber and the sour edge of human effort. Men crouch beside a marked line. Iron tools bite into stone. Wooden wedges are hammered into prepared cuts. Water is poured over them, and the swelling wood begins its slow pressure. The mountain answers with a crack, not a scream, not a roar. A clean, inward sound. A block loosens. People step back. Ropes are brought forward. Supervisors check the face, the corners, the weight, the usefulness. Nothing about this is casual. A single block may be one piece among thousands, but each one has a destination. Wall stone, pavement stone, column stone, lintel stone, carving stone. A temple begins by telling stone what it will become. You watch workers prepare the block for travel. They do not shape it into final beauty here. That would be foolish. And ancient workers were not foolish just because they lacked petrol engines. A block can chip during transport. A corner can break against timber. Rough shaping happens first, enough to reduce weight and guide later work, but not enough to risk delicate carving too soon. A mainstream historical fact sits beneath this process. Angkor Wat contains millions of sandstone blocks, although exact counts differ according to what is included. Researchers have estimated that the total stone volume required for Angkor's major monuments was enormous, and transport would have demanded coordinated use of canals, roads, rafts, rollers, sledges, and seasonal water. No modern crane is needed when a state can mobilize rivers, animals, carpenters, and time. The block is pulled toward a prepared path. The ground has been cleared. Timber beams help control movement. Ropes tighten around the stone, made from plant fiber and tested by use rather than theory. Men lean back together, bodies angled like bows. A foreman calls the rhythm. The block shifts a little, then it stops, because stone enjoys reminding humans of its personality. Another call, another pull. It moves slowly, stubbornly, almost insultingly slowly. The mountain begins its journey toward the king. You follow the route down from the hills. The forest closes around the path in dense green walls. Cicadas shrill from high branches. Leaves slap against shoulders. The air is wet and crowded with life. Elephants may be used in some stages of transport, especially where their strength can help move heavy loads, though scholars debate exactly how frequently they were used for sandstone movement, compared with human crews and water routes. There is that useful scholarly uncertainty again. Not ignorance, careful doubt. An open scholarly debate continues around the precise logistics of moving Angkor Wat's stones. Some studies emphasize floating blocks along canals connected to river systems during the wet season. Others suggest combined routes, where stones moved by land for part of the journey and by water for another. The exact balance remains difficult to prove, because the builders left more finished temples than shipping manuals, which is inconsiderate but understandable. At a river landing, the work changes. The sound of dragging gives way to creaking timber and sloshing water. Rafts or barges wait near the bank, built wide and strong enough to carry heavy stone. Workers roll the block toward the vessel with controlled caution. Every movement matters. A slipped block could crush feet, break timber, or sink a raft before the journey properly begins. Ancient construction has many ways of becoming suddenly personal. The river smells of mud, leaves, fish, and heat. Men stand knee-deep in brown water, guiding the load. Others steady ropes from the bank. A raft dips under the new weight, then steadies. The block rests on wood, and for the first time, its burden belongs partly to water. This is where the miracle becomes practical. Water does what muscles alone cannot. It carries weight across distance. It turns landscape into a road that moves. The Khmer builders understood this deeply. Their world was shaped by monsoon rhythms, lakes, rivers, canals, and seasonal floods. They did not fight water as an enemy. They recruited it, flattered it, contained it, and occasionally discovered that water was not interested in being flattered. A quirky fringe tidbit appears whenever people discuss the transport of great stones. Some storytellers claim the blocks were moved by lost anti-gravity knowledge or by sound vibrations known only to ancient priests. It is a delightful image. Priests humming politely at a boulder until it floats away. Yet the evidence points to something more impressive, because it required no magic. It required infrastructure, timing, labor discipline, and a civilization fluent in water. The raft moves downstream. The journey is not silent. Paddles dip, poles scrape against the riverbed, men shout warnings around bends, birds burst from reeds. The stone sits heavy and indifferent, as if it has always expected transportation. Along the banks, villagers pause to watch. Children stare wide-eyed. An old woman squints at the passing block, perhaps wondering whether anyone important will ever notice who grew the rice that fed the haulers. The river widens. Canals join the route. Embankments rise where human hands have disciplined water into straighter lines. The block passes through a landscape of ponds, fields, palm trees, and low houses. What seems natural from a distance becomes planned when seen closely. Banks are repaired, channels are dredged, landing places are maintained. Transport is not one event. It is a system kept alive. Days may pass, perhaps weeks. The stone travels through rain and heat, through delays and adjustments, through quiet reaches where dragonflies hover over green water. At night, the crews rest near banks. Fires glow low. Rice cooks in pots. Someone checks ropes for fraying. Someone sleeps with one arm across a tool. The stone waits in darkness, no closer to beauty than before, yet already part of the temple's future. When the block finally nears Angkor, the sacred work site receives it like a command delivered from the hills. Supervisors mark its arrival. Laborers unload it with the same caution used at the quarry. It may be moved to a storage area, shaped further, or guided toward the wall where it belongs. The temple is a vast appetite, always waiting for stone. One block arrives, then another, then another. The process continues so long that repetition becomes its own form of devotion. You place your hand against one imagined block. It is warm from the sun. Its surface is not yet smooth. Grains catch beneath your palm. You feel the mountains still inside it. You feel the river. You feel the ropes and timber. You feel the calls of workers, the wet banks, the aching backs, the careful eyes of builders who know that a mistake can live in stone for centuries. The finished temple hides this journey. That is part of its power. Angkor Wat appears still, unified, inevitable. It does not show the interrupted transport, broken ropes, jammed rafts, rain-swollen canals, cracked blocks, tired men, or the dull irritation of discovering that a stone has arrived in the wrong place. Grandeur edits out inconvenience. Archaeology tries, gently, to restore it. As the sun lowers, newly arrived blocks lie in rows. Their shadows stretch across the ground. Beyond them, parts of the temple already rise, while other parts remain scaffolds, ramps, dust, and noise. The place is neither quarry nor sanctuary yet. It is an in-between world where mountain pieces learn to become architecture. You understand something quiet and essential. Angkor Wat was not built because ancient people somehow ignored difficulty. It was built because they organized difficulty into stages. Cut the stone, shape the stone, move the stone, float the stone, unload the stone, dress the stone, place the stone, carve the stone, repeat until the king's dream becomes too large to deny. The sacred mountain was not found. It was assembled piece by piece. The hills traveled into the city. Rivers carried geology toward theology. Human labor persuaded rough earth to take the form of heaven. And somewhere in each block, beneath the carved surfaces and patient weathering, the quarry still remains, silent and waiting inside the temple wall. The scent of wet sandstone gives way to the dry touch of a measuring cord. You are standing within the unfinished plan of Angkor Wat, where the ground itself has begun to obey geometry. The noise of transport is quieter here. The heavy blocks have arrived, but their weight is only part of the story. Now the builders must decide where each line belongs, where each threshold opens, where each tower rises, and how human feet will move through a sacred map. This is the geometry of heaven. Nothing here is accidental. Although some things may still be argued over by tired supervisors with very human patience, a pathway runs straight toward the center. Enclosures fold around inner enclosures. Galleries form long rectangular corridors. Towers rise in a quincunx pattern, with one central height surrounded by 4 lesser peaks. From a distance, the temple looks like a mountain range made obedient to thought. You look down at the ground. Ropes stretch between posts. Markers sit in the soil. Workers align stone courses with careful attention, not because they enjoy making life difficult, although bureaucracy does have ancient roots. They do it because the temple must represent more than shelter. It must carry meaning in its shape. Angkor Wat reflects the idea of a cosmic mountain surrounded by oceans. The moat becomes a symbolic sea. The rising levels evoke sacred height. The central tower suggests the highest peak, the axis where heaven and earth meet. Scholars from Oxford, Yale, and other major institutions have written about Khmer temples as carefully ordered sacred landscapes, where religious symbolism, royal power, and architectural planning are fused into stone. You feel this symbolism in your body before your mind explains it. To enter the temple, you cross water, then you move along a causeway, then you pass through gates and courtyards, then you enter galleries, then the climb grows steeper. Each stage narrows the world around you. Ordinary life falls away by degrees. The temple persuades through walking. The builders understand sequence. They know that a monument is not only what you see, it is also what happens to you as you approach it. The length of the causeway delays arrival. The broad outer spaces make the inner heights seem more remote. The galleries draw the eyes along stone narratives. The steep stairs force the body to slow down. Even your breathing changes. Sacred design can be physical. It can make the knees negotiate with the soul. You watch a planner mark an axis across the site. He may not be the single genius imagined by modern storytelling. Large projects rarely belong to one mind, no matter how tidy that sounds. Instead, his knowledge belongs to traditions of temple building, priestly consultation, inherited measurement, astronomical attention, and practical experience gained from previous Khmer monuments. He is one voice in a trained chorus. A mainstream fact confirms the temple's extraordinary precision. Angkor Wat is oriented to the west, unlike many earlier Khmer temples that face east. Its layout also shows careful axial planning, mathematical proportions, and alignment with solar events observed by researchers studying the monument's architecture. The western orientation remains especially important because it gives the approach a solemn and unusual character. The sun itself becomes part of the design. At certain times of year, light behaves with ritual drama. Observers have noted that the sun can appear over the central tower during equinox sunrise when viewed from particular points. Whether this was a primary intention or one layer among several meanings remains debated. Still, the possibility reveals how sky and stone are constantly speaking at Angkor. There is an open scholarly debate about the exact role of astronomy in the temple's design. Some researchers argue that solar alignments were deliberately built into key sightlines. Others caution that symbolic orientation, royal ritual, theology, and landscape constraints may have mattered just as much. The safest truth is also the richest one. Angkor Wat may not reduce to a single explanation. It can be cosmology, politics, ritual, and engineering at once. Ancient buildings often enjoy being complicated. You step into an unfinished gallery. The floor stones are not yet smoothed by centuries of feet. The walls wait for carving. Light enters from openings and falls in long, pale bands across the interior. Dust hangs in the air. A worker checks the spacing of columns, while another inspects a stone joint. The geometry here is not abstract. It is held in palms, knees, eyes, ropes, levels, and repeated correction. Mistakes happen. A block is adjusted. A line is remeasured. A supervisor frowns in a way that suggests geometry has personally insulted him. Someone brings another chord. Someone else mutters that the previous chord was perfectly fine. The temple may be heavenly in plan, but it is built through ordinary irritation. That makes it more believable. A quirky fringe tidbit has attached itself to Angkor's layout for generations. Some writers have claimed that the temple encodes vast cosmic cycles, hidden numbers, or secret measurements of time far beyond ordinary royal symbolism. Certain numerical interpretations are intriguing, and a few may reflect genuine religious ideas. Others are probably the ancient monument equivalent of seeing faces in clouds, but with more arithmetic and confidence. Yet number mattered deeply to the builders. Proportion was not decoration. It was order made visible. The repetition of galleries, the balance of towers, the measured climb toward the central sanctuary. All these choices suggest a world where harmony must be built, because chaos always waits nearby. The temple's geometry does not merely describe the universe. It tries to stabilize it. You move toward the rising central mass. The stairs are steep, even in imagination. They climb at an angle that feels almost unreasonable, as if the stone is quietly testing your sincerity. This steepness is not a design flaw. It teaches ascent. It reminds the body that sacred height should not be reached casually. Heaven, apparently, does not offer handrails for the careless. The workers who built these heights knew danger well. A dropped stone could maim. A slip on a ramp could kill. A collapsing scaffold could ruin weeks of labor. Construction required temporary structures that later disappeared, leaving only the polished illusion of effortless stone. Wooden frames, earthen ramps, lifting devices, ropes, and human coordination all helped raise blocks into place. The finished monument erases its scaffolding like a king erases his rough drafts. You pause beside a measuring team. They are placing foundations for one of the inner walls. Their tools are simple by modern standards, but simple does not mean weak. A straight cord can preserve an axis. A plumb line can reveal vertical truth. A water level can speak calmly about balance. Repetition can refine accuracy across enormous distances. Modern people often worship complexity. Ancient builders respected reliability. The geometry spreads outward through the entire complex. The moat defines the first boundary. The enclosure wall makes a sacred perimeter. The causeway creates direction. The galleries frame movement. The towers establish hierarchy. Each piece tells you where you are in relation to the center. This is spatial storytelling, carved into the ground before any figure appears on the wall. You begin to sense the temple as a slow machine for transforming perception. From outside, it looks like a distant silhouette. From the entrance, it becomes a destination. From the galleries, it becomes a world of stories. From the upper levels, it becomes an ascent. From the central sanctuary, it becomes a point where earthly authority touches divine imagination. The design is doing the speaking. No modern tool is necessary for that. What matters is shared knowledge, disciplined measurement, and a culture that believes space can carry sacred truth. The builders did not need computers to think deeply about proportion. They needed tradition strong enough to guide many hands across many years. Late afternoon settles over the unfinished site. The long lines of the temple glow in warm light. Ropes lie coiled beside stones. Survey stakes cast thin shadows. The central tower, not yet complete, rises like a promise that has not learned its final shape. Around it, the smaller towers answer in measured silence. You stand within the plan and feel how vast intention can become calm. Angkor Wat is not large by accident. It is large with purpose. Its scale stretches the body. Its order steadies the eye. Its westward face darkens the mood. Its towers lift thought upward. Its moat places water between the ordinary world and the sacred one. Everything guides you, slowly and without shouting. The hidden truth becomes clearer. The builders were not merely stacking stones. They were arranging an experience. They were setting earth, water, sky, ritual, and royal power into one vast geometry. They were making a universe that could be entered by walking, and as the sun lowers beyond the western approach, the temple's lines become softer, almost tender. The cords are gathered. The workers leave their measurements for the evening. The stones remain where they have been placed, keeping the day's decisions through the night. Heaven here is not only above you, it is measured beneath your feet. A soft rasping sound gathers in the shaded gallery. It is not the sound of towers rising, or rafts arriving, or measuring cords snapping straight across the earth. It is smaller than that, more intimate. A chisel touches sandstone. A mallet answers. Dust falls in a fine, pale breath. The wall, still rough in places, begins to surrender its surface to human fingers. Here, eternity is made by hands. You stand close enough to see the marks before they become beauty. Lines are sketched into the stone. A shoulder appears, then a bracelet, then the curve of a dancer's hip, the edge of a crown, the bend of a wrist, the patient outline of a god. The carving is not sudden. It arrives slowly, through taps, scrapes, corrections, and the quiet courage of people who know one mistake may remain visible for centuries. They are tastes of grit. Stone powder clings to eyelashes and damp forearms. Oil lamps smoke in darker spaces. Sunlight filters through openings and lays pale rectangles across the floor. Somewhere nearby, a polisher rubs a surface again and again until roughness softens. Another artisan sharpens a tool, testing the edge with a thumb in the casual way of people who have made peace with small injuries. Angkor Wat holds thousands of carved figures, including celestial dancers, guardians, warriors, animals, and long narrative scenes. Scholars at institutions such as Harvard, Yale, and the University of Hawaii have examined Khmer art as a highly organized visual language, not merely decoration. These carvings record religious stories, royal authority, courtly ideals, and the disciplined labor of workshops whose names mostly vanished. You look at a line of female figures emerging from the wall. Their faces are calm, almost secretive. Their hair rises in elaborate forms. Their jewelry is carved with astonishing care. Anklets, necklaces, belts, and flowers sit in stone as if stone had always wanted to become silk, gold, and skin. No two seem entirely identical. A head tilts slightly. A smile changes by the smallest measure. A hand rests with different grace. That detail feels almost impossible, not because ancient people could not do it. They clearly could. It feels impossible because the modern eye forgets how long attention can last when trained by tradition. A sculptor can spend days on a single face. A polisher can return to one surface until it catches light properly. Patience can become so precise that it feels like enchantment. A quirky tidbit follows these figures through modern conversation. Some visitors like to claim the carved dancers reveal the hairstyles and fashions of real women at the Khmer court, almost like a 12th century style catalog. That is partly tempting and partly dangerous. The figures are idealized, sacred, and artistic. Still, they may preserve echoes of courtly beauty, jewelry, and performance that once moved in living bodies before becoming stone. You hear another tap. A master carver pauses beside an apprentice. He points with the handle of his tool. The young worker has cut a curve too deeply. Not disastrous, but not elegant. The master does not need to shout. Stone itself is already an excellent critic. The apprentice lowers his eyes, adjusts his grip, and begins again with slower care. Skill passes this way, not through grand speeches, but through correction. A workshop is a school, a family, a hierarchy, and occasionally a place where everyone secretly dislikes the person who misplaced the best chisel. You imagine older artisans with scarred hands and younger workers trying to copy their movements. You imagine pride, boredom, rivalry, tenderness, and exhaustion. The temple does not record their conversations, but the surfaces remember their discipline. Some carvings begin as sacred obligation. Others feel like endurance tests arranged by the gods for people with very strong wrists. Bas reliefs stretch along walls in elaborate scenes, crowded with warriors, animals, divine beings, chariots, forests, palaces, and moving armies. To carve one figure is difficult. To carve a procession across a gallery requires a system. Different teams may work on separate sections while following shared conventions, measurements, and iconographic rules. This is not random artistry, it is coordinated imagination. A mainstream historical fact grounds the work in stone. The famous bas-reliefs of Angkor Wat include scenes from Hindu epics and royal warfare, carved across extensive gallery walls. Art historians have studied differences in style and execution that suggest multiple hands and phases of work. Some sections appear highly finished, while others show changes, repairs, or variations in quality, offering a quiet glimpse into the construction process. There is an open, scholarly debate about how many artisan teams worked at Angkor Wat and how their labor was organized. Some researchers see evidence of specialized workshops assigned to particular galleries or motifs. Others caution that weathering, later restoration, and unfinished areas complicate firm conclusions. The debate continues because the wall is both document and artwork, generous in detail, yet reluctant in confession. You move closer to a warrior's face. His eye is a single carved line. His mouth is firm. His crown rises in careful tiers. Around him, bodies press into battle. Horses strain, arrows fly, and commanders stand with composed authority. Yet even in scenes of war, the carving remains controlled. The violence is stylized, absorbed into pattern. The wall turns chaos into procession. That is one of art's old tricks. It makes terror behave. The sculptors are not only copying stories, they are shaping how stories should be seen. Gods are larger. Kings are composed. Armies move in ordered ranks. Demons and animals surge with energy, but within limits. The stone teaches hierarchy without explaining it. Your eyes learn who matters most by size, placement, posture, and detail. In the deeper shade, a priest examines an image. He checks whether the form is proper. Sacred art is not free in the modern sense. A divine figure must be recognizable. Gestures matter. Attributes matter. Proportions matter. The sculptor may be brilliant, but brilliance must serve the sacred pattern. Creativity moves within tradition, like water moving within a carved channel. The worker nods and returns to the wall. Stone dust gathers around his feet like pale ash. His shoulders ache. His fingers stiffen. He may never see the entire temple completed. He may carve a small portion of one gallery, then vanish from history as completely as breath from a mirror. Yet his hand remains in the curve of a cheek, the edge of a necklace, the fold of a garment. This is the tenderness hidden inside monumentality. Grand buildings can make individuals seem small. Carvings bring them near again. Every line required pressure. Every polished surface required touch. Every pattern required someone to see not only the stone as it was, but the figure sleeping inside it. You step into a place where polishers work. Their task is quieter than carving, and perhaps less celebrated. They smooth surfaces with abrasive stones and sand, patient as weather, but more intentional. The wall changes under their labor. Shadows soften. Light begins to glide. A carving without finishing can feel mute. A finished surface begins to breathe. The smell here is damp stone and skin. Outside, the sun burns hot. Inside, the corridor remains cooler, with small sounds carrying strangely along the walls. A cough travels far. A tool drop rings like a temple bell with poor manners. Someone laughs softly and is told to be quiet, because sacred work apparently requires dignity, even when someone has just stepped in wet plaster. You notice the hands of the workers, not the graceful hands carved on divine figures, but real hands, cracked nails, calloused palms, cuts healed into pale lines, fingers stained by dust. These are the hidden instruments of Angkor Wat. Ropes moved the blocks. Water carried the stones. Geometry placed the temple, but hands gave it presence. Without hands, it would be a mountain of fitted silence. Even priests depend on them. Even kings depend on them. The wall becomes a meeting place between command and touch. Royal authority says what must be glorified. Religious tradition says how the sacred must appear. Workshop training says how the stone must be cut. The artisan's hand makes all of it visible. If his hand trembles, the god's lip changes. If his tool slips, a divine bracelet loses its grace. Near evening, work slows. Tools are cleaned and gathered. Lamps are trimmed. Finished surfaces catch the last warm light, while unfinished sections retreat into shadow. Half-formed figures wait for another day, their faces still trapped in rough stone. A dancer has one carved eye and one blank place where sight will come later. She seems both ancient and unborn. You stand with her in the cooling air. The temple feels less like an object now. It feels like accumulated touch. Thousands of decisions, thousands of corrections, thousands of ordinary days pressed into stone until the result appears timeless. That is the illusion of eternity. It is made from minutes and from bodies that grow tired. The largest temple ever built without modern tools did not become beautiful by scale alone. Its beauty required trained hands moving carefully through dust and heat. It required eyes patient enough to follow a line until it became life. It required workers who knew that sacred perfection was built from small acts repeated until the wall finally began to speak. In the dim gallery, the last chisel note fades. The stone holds the sound. The sound of the last chisel fades into the low murmur of moving water. You are standing beside one of Angkor's canals in the heavy afternoon heat. The air is dense, wet, and green. Dragonflies hover above the surface like tiny blue sparks. Reeds bend at the edge of the channel, and the smell of mud rises with the warmth. Somewhere beyond the trees, a wooden gate creaks as workers adjust the flow. Water is never still here. Even when it seems quiet, it is part of a system. It gathers from rain, seeps through soil, slides through channels, fills reservoirs, drains from fields, and returns in ways that ancient engineers had to understand with unusual care. At Angkor, water is not only a background detail, it is the hidden engine beneath the sacred city, the soft force that allows stone, rice, labor, and royal ambition to continue. A temple may rise from sandstone. A kingdom rises from water. Archaeological research confirms that Angkor was supported by an immense hydraulic landscape. Scholars from institutions including the University of Sydney, Yale, and the University of Illinois have studied reservoirs, canals, embankments, spillways, and ponds across the region. Their work shows that Angkor's builders did not simply live beside water. They organized it across a vast area, linking practical irrigation, urban drainage, transport, and ritual symbolism. You look along the canal. Its banks are not accidental. They have been cut, raised, repaired, and watched. Men stand in the muddy shallows with baskets and tools, clearing silt that has gathered after rain. Others carry timber beams for a sluice. A supervisor checks the bank with narrowed eyes, because water has a talent for finding weaknesses and making them embarrassing. Water is polite until it is not. The builders know this. Too little water means hungry fields. Too much water means collapsed banks, flooded paths, ruined work sites, and angry officials who suddenly remember everyone's name. The Khmer world depends on balancing abundance and danger. The monsoon brings life, but it also brings pressure. Each season tests the channels, reservoirs, embankments, and the people responsible for them. You walk toward a great reservoir. Its scale is difficult to hold in the mind. The surface stretches wide beneath the sky, pale with reflected clouds. Birds skim across it. The far edge shimmers in the heat. Standing beside it, you feel how water can become monumental too. Stone towers impress the eye, but a reservoir impresses the stomach. It whispers of rice, storage, survival, and control. The reservoirs of Angkor, often called barays by modern scholars, were among the most striking features of the city's landscape. Some were enormous artificial basins, associated with temple centers and royal authority. Researchers continue to discuss their exact functions, but the evidence suggests that they served multiple roles. They held water, structured space, expressed sacred order, and displayed the power of rulers who could reshape the earth itself. That combination is important. Practical things can also be symbolic. A reservoir can feed fields and reflect heaven. A canal can move goods and mark authority. A moat can protect, drain, beautify, and represent the cosmic ocean all at once. Modern minds like categories. Ancient landscapes often refuse to sit inside them politely. You kneel near the water's edge. The mud is soft beneath your fingers. Tiny bubbles rise where something unseen moves below. The surface carries bits of leaf, a broken twig, and the faint oily shimmer of disturbed silt. This is not the romantic water of a polished travel photograph. This is working water. It stains feet. It breeds insects. It nourishes rice. It supports the entire performance of sacred permanence. A mainstream historical fact rests beneath the scene. The region around Angkor depended heavily on wet rice agriculture, and rice surplus helped sustain large populations, temple labor, officials, priests, and artisans. Studies from major research groups have connected Angkor's urban success to its ability to manage water across seasonal extremes. Without stored and directed water, the great building projects would have struggled to breathe. You follow a group of workers along an embankment. Their feet sink slightly into damp clay. They carry baskets of earth, stones for reinforcement, and tools worn smooth by repeated use. The work is slow and repetitive. A bank is raised. A weak edge is repaired. A channel is cleared. A wooden control point is strengthened. No one will carve their names into history for this, which is probably why history needed archaeologists. The temple depends on such unglamorous labor. Every elegant tower has an invisible muddy twin. A quirky fringe tidbit often appears in stories about Angkor's hydraulic works. Some writers have imagined secret machines hidden beneath the reservoirs, devices that lifted water through lost mechanical knowledge. It is a tempting vision, all hidden wheels and bronze mysteries beneath lotus ponds. Yet the greater wonder is more grounded. Angkor's power lay in earthworks, gravity, seasonal timing, labor coordination, and an intimate reading of the land. There may have been devices, but the landscape itself was the machine. Water moves downhill. Channels guide it. Embankments restrain it. Reservoirs store it. Gates release it. Fields receive it. People monitor it. This is engineering spread across miles, so large that it becomes difficult to see as one system. You do not stand before a single contraption. You stand inside it. The sky darkens suddenly. Rain approaches from the west. A wall of gray moving across the trees. The air cools. Leaves turn their pale undersides upward. Workers look toward the clouds with practiced resignation. Then the rain arrives, warm and heavy, striking the water so hard that the reservoir seems to boil. The canal swells. Mud loosens underfoot. Voices rise as men check the flow. Everything becomes urgent. The comm system reveals its tension. A canal that worked yesterday may overflow today. A blocked channel can send water where it should not go. A weakened bank can fail under pressure. Hydraulic order is never finished. It must be maintained, watched, repaired, and negotiated with weather. The engineers of Angkor were not building a permanent machine and walking away. They were joining a long conversation with rain. There is an open scholarly debate about how Angkor's water system changed over time. Some researchers argue that extreme droughts and heavy monsoon events damaged the network and contributed to political decline. Others warn that environmental stress interacted with war, trade shifts, religious change, and administrative strain. The strongest interpretations do not choose one cause too quickly. They listen for many pressures moving together. For now, the system still works. Water rushes along the channel with brown force. A wooden barrier is adjusted. Men shout across the rain. Someone slips, rises with wounded dignity, and pretends it was mostly intentional. The storm passes as quickly as it came, leaving leaves shining and the air smelling of clean earth. Frogs begin their evening chorus with unreasonable confidence. You walk toward Angkor Wat's moat. Here, the water changes mood. It becomes ceremonial. The broad moat lies around the temple like a dark boundary between ordinary ground and sacred space. It reflects towers, clouds, stars, and passing birds. It also helps manage water, stabilize the temple's environment, and define the monument's sacred enclosure. Beauty and function share the same surface. The moat is not decoration. It is meaning made wet, standing at its edge. You understand why water was essential to the temple's power. The visitor must cross it. The eye must see the towers rising beyond it. The body must feel separation before entry. The water slows you, frames the stone, and suggests an ocean surrounding the world mountain. It turns approach into ritual without asking your permission. That is architectural genius in liquid form. The workers who maintained such waterworks may have seemed far from the sanctity of inner chambers. Yet without them, the sacred landscape would falter. A blocked canal can threaten rice. Failed rice can weaken labor. Weak labor can stop construction. Broken banks can undermine roads. Water management links the smallest ditch to the grandest tower. You listen to evenings settle across the hydraulic city. Paddles dip in canals. Fish strike at insects. Water drips from palm leaves into swollen ditches. Somewhere, officials measure obligations connected to fields and temple estates. Somewhere else, a family watches their rice plants stand bright green beneath the clearing sky. The temple waits beyond the moat, massive and serene, as if serenity had not required thousands of muddy interventions. Perhaps this is the most hidden tool Angkor possessed. Not iron, not wheels, not secret machines. Water. Water carried stones, water-fed workers, water-filled moats, water-shaped roads, fields, calendars, and fears. Water made royal construction possible, and quietly demanded payment and maintenance forever. The largest temple ever built without modern tools was raised by hands, guided by geometry, carved by skill, and sustained by a restless moving force that never belonged fully to any king. Night gathers over the reservoirs. The last light fades across the canals. Frogs sing from the banks. The moat darkens until it becomes a second sky at the temple's feet. You stand there, listening to the soft movements beneath the surface, and the hidden machinery of Angkor feels suddenly alive. It does not clatter. It flows. The flowing water darkens, and the temple begins to feel like a question of power. You stand at the edge of the sacred enclosure while evening gathers behind the towers. The stones no longer seem only heavy, measured, and carved. They seem purposeful. Every wall, gallery, stairway, and sanctuary appears to be answering an invisible command. The temple does not simply ask how it was built. It asks why so many lives were gathered to build it. That question is quieter. It also cuts deeper. Angkor Wat was dedicated to Vishnu during the reign of Surya Varman II, a fact confirmed by inscriptions, iconography, and long scholarly study. Historians associated with major universities, including Yale, Cornell, and the School of Oriental and African Studies, have explored how Khmer kingship fused religion, warfare, land control, and ritual display. Angkor Wat was not merely a place of worship. It was a royal statement in stone. You walk through the western entrance with slower steps. The air cools within the passage. Outside, birds settle in the trees. Inside, shadows gather along the stone walls. The temple seems to draw sound inward and soften it. Footsteps lose their sharpness. Voices become careful. Even a skeptical visitor would feel the building teaching restraint. Power often begins by changing how people move. The king understood that, or his priests did, or his architects did. Most likely, all of them understood it together. A great temple must convince different audiences in different ways. To priests, it is a sacred home for divine presence. To nobles, it is a sign of royal legitimacy. To workers, it may be obligation, duty, fear, devotion, or all of those mixed together in the stomach. To foreign envoys, it is a warning delivered through architecture. Look what this kingdom can command. Look what this king can make endure. At the center of the temple stands the idea of the ruler as a cosmic figure. Khmer kings were not simply administrators with jewelry, although they certainly had plenty of jewelry. They were presented as protectors of order, linked to divine forces, responsible for prosperity, warfare, ritual, and the stability of the realm. A monument like Angkor Wat turned that claim into a landscape you could enter. The temple made kingship visible. This visibility mattered because power is always slightly nervous. It may appear confident from a distance, but every ruler knows that loyalty must be renewed. Rice harvests can fail. Provinces can resist. Rivals can gather supporters. Armies can lose. Priests can favor another patron. The royal body is mortal, and everyone eventually notices. Stone helps disguise that awkward fact. Perhaps that's one hidden purpose of Angkor Wat. It was built to outlive doubt. You pause beside a long gallery. The walls do not simply carry decoration. They carry a vision of order. Gods defeat demons. Armies move in ranks. Royal processions unfold with ceremonial control. The universe is not random here. It has hierarchy. It has center and boundary. It has proper places for gods, kings, warriors, servants, animals, spirits, and enemies. A mainstream historical fact supports this reading. The bas-reliefs include a major depiction of Surya Varman II seated in royal splendor, surrounded by court officials and military order. Scholars from institutions such as the University of Michigan and Oxford have treated this scene as a significant visual statement of kingship. The king appears not as a casual human ruler, but as the still point around which authority is arranged. You imagine people standing before that carved royal image. Some may feel pride. Some may feel awe. Some may feel tired because they helped build the wall and still have work in the morning. But the message is difficult to miss. The king belongs inside a cosmic order. His rule is not only political, it is woven into heaven's structure, or so the stone would very much like everyone to believe. The temple is persuasion, beautiful persuasion, but persuasion all the same. The dedication to Vishnu gives the monument a particular mood. Vishnu is associated with preservation, cosmic order, and divine kingship across many traditions. A ruler linked to Vishnu can present himself as a guardian of stability, a restorer of balance, a defender against chaos. That is a useful divine association for any king with borders, armies, tax obligations, and ambitious relatives. Ancient theology often has excellent political instincts. Still, the meaning of Angkor Wat did not remain fixed forever. Over time, the temple became associated with Buddhist worship, and Buddhist monks helped preserve its sacred use across centuries. This transformation did not erase the older layers. It settled over them like new incense in an old chamber. The temple became a place where meanings accumulated rather than vanished. You step into a shadowed corridor where a monk might later walk. The sound changes. There's less royal thunder now, more quiet endurance. Lamps flicker before images. Cloth touches stone. Prayers rise softly into spaces first shaped for another tradition. A monument built for one sacred order learns to shelter another. That ability to change may explain part of Angkor Wat's survival. Stone that accepts new devotion does not die easily. There is an open scholarly debate about Angkor Wat's original purpose as a state temple, funerary monument, or a combination of both. Some researchers connect the westward orientation with Vishnu and royal devotion. Others see funerary symbolism tied to Suryavarman, the second's death and afterlife. A more careful view allows several purposes to coexist. Ancient monuments rarely behave like forms with one little box checked. A king could honor a god, a king could glorify himself, a king could prepare for death, a king could do all three before breakfast, if the bureaucracy was efficient. That layered purpose gives the temple its strange emotional weight. It does not feel like a simple celebration. It feels solemn. The westward approach, the measured ascent, the enclosed galleries, and the cosmic plan all create an atmosphere of passage. You are not only entering sacred ground, you are moving through a royal vision of eternity, where death is answered by architecture, yet the human cost remains nearby. Every sacred purpose required ordinary effort. Ritual purity required water carriers. Divine images required sculptors. Royal memory required quarry workers. Cosmic order required cooks, rope makers, boatmen, farmers, potters, clerks, and people sent from villages because the state demanded service. The higher the meaning rises, the deeper the labor beneath it must become. This does not make the temple false. It makes it human. A quirky fringe tidbit sometimes claims that Angkor Wat was built as an ancient power station, designed to collect spiritual or earthly energy from hidden lines beneath the landscape. The idea has a certain misty charm, especially if one ignores the complete absence of convincing evidence. Yet in a metaphorical sense, the temple truly was a power station. It collected devotion, labor, authority, food surplus, and sacred symbolism, then turned them into royal legitimacy. That kind of energy can move kingdoms. You look toward the central tower. It rises above the courts like a final thought. The climb toward it is steep, almost severe. This height separates the inner sanctuary from the ordinary world. Not everyone could approach the center freely. Access itself becomes a language. The closer one moves to the Sacred Heart, the more controlled the space becomes. Architecture decides who may come near power. The gods have rooms. The king has claims. The people have thresholds. You feel that structure around you as the light fades. The temple is not only open grandeur, it is also controlled passage, outer spaces, inner galleries, elevated sanctuary, central tower. Each layer sorts the world. Each layer tells you that hierarchy is not merely social, but cosmic. To move inward is to accept the logic of the building. Perhaps that's why Angkor Wat still feels powerful, even stripped of its original court, even visited by tourists, monks, scholars, and tired travelers. The building continues to shape behavior. People lower their voices. They look upward. They slow their steps. They photograph. Yes, because modern devotion often comes with storage limits, but they also pause. The temple still knows how to make human beings feel small without making them feel meaningless. Night enters the galleries. The carved figures grow dim. The central tower becomes a dark mass against the sky. The moat outside reflects a few early stars. The air smells of stone, dampness, leaves, and faint incense. In this softness, the purpose of Angkor Wat seems both grand and uncertain. It was built for Vishnu. It It was built for Suryavarman. It was built for order, memory, death, glory, and the hope that sacred architecture could hold a kingdom together. And perhaps it was built because rulers, like all people, fear being forgotten. The temple does not confess one answer. It gathers many: God and king, heaven and earth, devotion and display, fear and beauty. And in the quiet between them, you sense the old machinery of belief still turning, slowly, somewhere inside the stone. The old machinery of belief turns into a corridor of stone stories. You are walking beside the bas reliefs now, close enough for your fingertips to hover just above the carved surface. The gallery is long, shaded, and cool, with air that smells faintly of damp sandstone, dust, incense smoke, and the slow breath of centuries. Outside, the sun burns on courtyards and towers. Inside, the walls begin speaking in their own measured language. They do not shout, they unfold. A line of figures moves across the stone, then another, then another. Warriors march beneath parasols. Horses lift their carved legs. Elephants carry riders with solemn authority. Gods stand larger than the beings around them, calm inside scenes that would terrify ordinary people. Demons twist, soldiers strain, banners rise, weapons point. And yet everything remains controlled, as if chaos has been taught to walk in procession. Angkor Wat's bas-reliefs are among the largest and most sophisticated narrative carvings of the medieval world. Art historians from institutions such as Yale, Princeton, and the University of California have studied them as visual records of religion, kingship, warfare, and cosmic order. They're not simple illustrations. They're stone performances, guiding the viewer through sacred stories and royal claims at walking speed. You begin with battle, not because battle is the whole story, but because power likes to place itself near organized violence. On one wall, armies gather in ranks. Commanders appear composed. Soldiers fill the lower registers with disciplined movement. The king is shown seated among his court and forces, larger in meaning than in mere scale. Around him, attendants hold parasols and standards, making authority visible through ritual detail. The scene feels calm and tense at once. That is its strange achievement. War is carved here without disorder taking over. Bodies overlap, weapons rise, elephants advance, but the composition refuses panic. The wall does not say that war is pleasant. It says that war can be placed inside royal order. That is a very useful message for a kingdom built on command, tribute, prestige, and borders that required frequent attention. You notice the elephants first. They stand massive and steady, their trunks curved, their ears marked with careful lines. On their backs sit riders and officers, lifted above the crowd like moving towers. Elephants were real instruments of power in Southeast Asian warfare and ceremony. But on the wall, they become more than animals. They become platforms of kingship, strength, and terrifyingly large transportation with opinions. Even stone elephants seem stubborn. A mainstream historical fact anchors the scene. Khmer inscriptions and carvings show that war, tribute, ritual service, and temple patronage were deeply connected in royal ideology. Scholars at Cornell and other major research centers have examined how kings used monumental art to present conquest and order as sacred duties. The bas-reliefs turn political power into a story that looks eternal, even when real politics was never so tidy. You continue along the gallery, and the battlefield changes into myth. The world becomes larger than armies. Here, gods and demons gather around a great serpent in the famous scene of the churning of the ocean of milk. They pull in opposite directions, straining across the long wall. At the center rises a divine mountain used as the churning rod. Beneath it, a great turtle supports the cosmic labor. Above, divine beings observe the vast effort by which immortality and treasures emerge from the sea. The scene is grand, but also oddly familiar. Everyone is pulling on something. Some pull for power. Some pull for immortality. Some pull because the cosmic work demands it. And someone higher up has clearly assigned them a position. The gods and demons may disagree, but they are locked into the same labor. The universe itself seems to require tension before it can produce blessing. That idea fits Angkor Wat perfectly. A temple is also made by opposing forces held in order: stone and water, king and worker, death and immortality, forest and city, faith and administration. The bas-relief is myth, but myth is not escape. It reflects the deeper structure of the world that built the temple. A quirky fringe tidbit follows this famous carving. Some modern enthusiasts claim the churning scene encodes secret scientific knowledge about energy, vibration, or cosmic machinery. The evidence for those claims is thin, although the image does feel strangely mechanical. Two sides pull. A central axis turns. A hidden treasure is produced. It is not ancient physics. Still, it is a powerful picture of effort transformed into order. You walk slowly past the serpent's body. The carved figures are repeated, yet not lifeless. Faces differ. Postures vary. Muscles tighten in patterned rhythm. The wall makes repetition feel ceremonial. You begin to understand how a viewer in the 12th century might read it not as static art, but as movement frozen just long enough for the mind to enter. In the next stretch, heaven and judgment appear. The reliefs show realms of reward and punishment, ordered according to moral imagination. Some figures enjoy celestial comfort. Others endure consequences for earthly actions. The images are severe, but they are also organized. Even suffering is placed inside a system, classified, displayed, and explained by cosmic law. The wall suggests that nothing disappears without being measured. This is not casual storytelling. It is moral architecture. The temple teaches through stone what priests may teach through voice. The viewer sees that actions matter. Kings matter. Gods matter. Cosmic order watches. The human world is not loose and meaningless. According to this vision, it is observed, judged, and arranged beyond sight. There is an open scholarly debate about how these reliefs were viewed in ritual practice. Some researchers argue that pilgrims and priests may have moved through the galleries in prescribed directions, reading the stories as part of ceremonial journeys. Others suggest that access, visibility, and later religious changes complicate any single reconstruction. The walls invite movement, but they do not leave a tidy instruction note. Stone is generous. Stone is also evasive. You pause before a carved face worn soft by time. Its eyes are shallow now. Its mouth has lost the sharpness of the original cut. Rain, touch, lichen, and centuries have thinned its expression. Yet the face remains present, like someone listening from behind a curtain. You wonder who carved it? Was it a senior artisan trusted with important figures? Was it an apprentice finishing a lesser section under watchful eyes? Did the carver believe every detail carried sacred force? Or was he mostly worried about making the nose symmetrical before supper? Human beings can be devoted and hungry at the same time. History should allow them that dignity. The gallery continues. Stories from Hindu epics unfold in stone. Armies clash. Heroes confront enemies. Divine beings intervene. Horses, monkeys, chariots, forests, and palaces crowd the surface. The episodes are not random decoration. They place Angkor's royal world inside a larger universe of sacred conflict, heroic duty, loyalty, and cosmic victory. The king's temple borrows the authority of ancient narrative and fixes it into sandstone. That is how old stories work. They lend weight to new power. In the dimness, you sense the bas reliefs as more than images. They are a library without pages, a court ceremony without sound, a sermon without a preacher, a political announcement disguised as sacred beauty, a memory system for people who read with eyes, bodies, and tradition, not with quiet paper in private rooms. The walls make you move. They slow your steps. They turn your head. They ask you to compare scenes, notice hierarchy, feel repetition, and accept scale. The narratives stretch so far that no single glance can hold them. You must spend time with them. That may be part of their purpose. A story carved across a wall makes attention into devotion. Outside, wind stirs the trees beyond the gallery. The corridor remains cool. Shadows gather in the carved recesses. A god's crown catches a thin line of light. A demon's mouth darkens. A soldier's hand rests forever on a weapon he will never lift. The wall contains movement, but the stone itself is still. That stillness gives the stories their haunting calm. Perhaps every bas relief is a negotiation with time. The maker's new bodies vanish. Voices fade. Wooden houses rot. Court speeches die almost immediately, which is sometimes merciful. But a carved story can remain. It can continue speaking after the language around it shifts, after worship changes, after the kingdom that ordered it has passed into study and silence. Yet the wall does not explain everything. It gives scenes, not full confessions. It shows kingship, but not the doubts behind it. It shows armies, but not every wound. It shows gods, but not every private prayer. It shows cosmic justice, but not the uncertainty people must have felt when floods failed, rulers died, or enemies approached. The bas-reliefs reveal a world, and they hide one too. You continue walking. The corridor lengthens in the imagination. Figures keep emerging, one after another, as if the stone has no end. Each scene adds a layer to the temple's purpose. This is not only a sacred mountain, it is a story world. It is an archive of order, violence, devotion, ambition, morality, and myth. The largest temple ever built without modern tools did not rely only on size to overwhelm the heart. It filled its walls with narratives that could surround a person completely. A visitor did not merely see the temple. They entered a carved universe where every step passed beneath the eyes of gods, kings, warriors, and beings from older dreams. At the far end of the gallery, the light grows softer. The carved procession continues into shadow. The figures do not move, and yet they seem unwilling to rest. Their silence is not empty. It is the silence of a story still being told, slowly, to anyone patient enough to walk beside it. The carved stories thin into shadow, and stranger rumors begin to gather there. You stand in a quieter part of the temple, where the air is cooler and the stone seems less willing to explain itself. The corridor turns. The light weakens. A bat shifts somewhere above you with a faint, dry rustle. Outside, the living world continues with birds, leaves, footsteps, and distant voices. Inside, the ancient walls hold the mood of a sealed thought. This is where imagination enters softly, not loudly, not with wild certainty, just as a small unease at the edge of evidence. Every great monument attracts legends. Angkor Wat attracts more than most, because its scale feels almost unreasonable, and its silence gives the mind too much room to wander. When people cannot easily imagine labor, planning, and time, they often invite lost masters, hidden chambers, forgotten sciences, or visitors from the stars to solve the discomfort. It is flattering, in a strange way. The achievement is so immense that some people hesitate to give full credit to the builders. But the stones do not need rescuing from human hands. They were made by them. Still, the fringe shadows of Angkor are part of the temple's afterlife. They reveal what modern people fear, desire, and misunderstand when facing ancient genius. You hear whispers of secret rooms beneath the central tower, maps hidden in the measurements, lost priestly technologies, and energies flowing through the moat like a sleeping current. Some claims are harmlessly poetic. Others quietly erase the intelligence of the Khmer world. That is worth noticing. A mainstream historical fact offers firm ground beneath your feet. Archaeologists have documented Angkor Wat through excavation, architectural study, conservation work, inscriptional research, and remote sensing surveys. Major research teams from institutions such as the University of Sydney, the University of Hawaii, and the French School of Asian Studies have shown that the temple belongs to a broad human landscape of roads, canals, quarries, workshops, and urban settlement. The evidence points toward organization, not alien intervention. Yet mystery remains. That is the important distinction. Mystery does not mean impossibility. It means incomplete knowledge. It means there are gaps where careful questions should live. How many workers were present at different moments? Which teams carved which galleries? What exact rituals occurred in the highest sanctuary? How did logistical command flow from royal court to village obligation? These are real mysteries. Dignified mysteries. Mysteries with mud on their feet and stone dust in their hair. They are better than shortcuts. You pause beside a darkened doorway. The threshold feels colder than the surrounding wall. Your fingers touch worn stone near the edge, polished by centuries of passing hands. The space beyond is small, plain, and shadowed. Nothing supernatural appears. No golden mechanism hums in the floor. No secret voice explains the universe, which is honestly poor service from a mysterious doorway. And yet, the small room still feels powerful. Its power comes from absence. The temple is filled with such absences. Wooden beams vanished, painted surfaces faded, metal images were removed, stolen, melted, relocated, or lost. Ritual sounds disappeared into air long ago. Many inscriptions that might have explained daily operations did not survive, or were never carved in the first place. What remains is magnificent, but not complete. That incompleteness invites speculation. A quirky fringe tidbit often repeated about Angkor concerns supposedly hidden astronomical codes. Some writers argue that distances and dimensions encode vast cycles of time, linking the temple to cosmic ages with astonishing precision. Certain numerical patterns may reflect meaningful sacred design, because Khmer builders valued proportion, direction, and cosmology. Yet many extreme claims stretch the evidence until it begins to look embarrassed. Numbers can guide. They can also seduce. Ancient monuments are especially vulnerable to this. Measure enough things, and patterns begin to appear. Some are intentional, some are accidental, some are created by the desire to find a secret message. The human mind loves patterns so much that it will politely invent one if the universe delays delivery. Still, you should not dismiss every unusual idea too quickly. Scholarly caution is not the same as dullness. It is a candle carried carefully through a dark chamber. The serious study of Angkor has repeatedly revealed things once invisible to the eye. Airborne laser scanning exposed buried urban grids beneath forest cover. Remote surveys revealed roads, mounds, ponds, and water features hidden beneath vegetation. What once seemed empty jungle became a complex human landscape. So the lesson is delicate. Some hidden things are real. Not every hidden thing is true. There is an open scholarly debate about whether some chambers and architectural features at Angkor Wat held funerary, ritual, astronomical, or symbolic functions now difficult to reconstruct. Some researchers emphasize the temple's westward orientation and possible connection to royal death. Others focus on Vishnu worship, sacred geography, and state ceremony. The evidence supports layered meanings, but resists a single dramatic key that unlocks everything. The temple does not behave like a puzzle box. It behaves like a civilization. You move into a gallery where the light catches faint marks in the stone. Repairs, tool traces, weathering, and later modifications overlap. Angkor Wat was not finished once and then placed under glass by history. It was used, adapted, damaged, repaired, worshipped in, studied, photographed, restored, and argued over. Each era left touches upon the earlier one. That alone creates confusion. A later carving may be mistaken for an original intention. A damaged wall may look like an entrance to something hidden. A blocked passage may invite rumors of sealed chambers. Restoration stones may be misread by eager eyes. The temple has lived too long to remain simple. You hear water outside the wall. The moat lies beyond the enclosure, dark and patient. Its reflected sky has inspired another set of stories. Some have claimed that the moat protected hidden knowledge, forming a symbolic barrier against unprepared minds. In ritual terms, crossing water certainly mattered. But as engineering, the moat also helped define space, manage water, and stabilize the sacred setting. The practical and symbolic are not enemies here. They share the same reflection. This is where Angkor unsettles modern categories. People want to know whether the temple is religious or political, practical or symbolic, astronomical or architectural, human or divine. The answer is often yes. Ancient builders did not separate meaning from function as neatly as modern labels prefer. A canal could move water and express order. A tower could mark power and imitate heaven. A measurement could be practical and sacred. The hidden truth may be complexity itself. Not a secret machine, not a buried throne room full of impossible metal, not a map left by vanished beings. Just a society so capable, so organized, and so symbolically rich that modern people sometimes find it easier to imagine magic than administration. That is gentle sarcasm from history. Perhaps we fear paperwork, so we invent aliens. The temple remains patient with this. It has heard many explanations. In the 19th century, European visitors often described Angkor in ways that made discovery seem foreign, despite local knowledge and living religious practice. That, too, became a kind of myth, the myth of a lost city waiting for outsiders to notice it. The truth is quieter and more respectful. Khmer memory, Buddhist presence, local communities, and regional histories never fully abandoned Angkor Wat. The world beyond simply learned to look again. You stand beside a wall touched by many centuries. There may once have been pigment here. Some scholars have studied traces of color on Angkorian sculpture and architecture, reminding us that the temple we see as gray stone may once have held painted surfaces, gilded elements, cloth, lamps, flowers, and scent. The ancient temple was not only a stone skeleton, it was sensory, decorated, inhabited, and alive. That thought changes the mystery. The missing secret is not one hidden object. It is the vanished fullness of experience. You imagine the temple with color, red, gold, black, white, and deep shadow, incense in the galleries, oil lamps flickering on carved faces, priests moving through controlled spaces, offerings laid before images, Officials arriving with ceremony, workers cleaning, repairing, carrying, whispering, waiting. The past becomes less like a ruin and more like a living temperature. A strange softness enters the air. The fringe shadows recede, but they do not disappear. They remain as reminders that wonder can take wrong turns. A person can love mystery and still respect evidence. A person can feel awe without stealing the achievement from the people who earned it. Angkor Wat does not need impossible explanations to be impossible in feeling. Its reality is enough. You step back into the corridor. The stone is quiet again. No hidden door opens. No secret code announces itself. Yet the temple feels deeper than before, because you have seen how mystery gathers around greatness. Some mystery is careless. Some is beautiful. Some is scholarly and precise. Some is only loneliness looking for a story. Angkor holds them all without answering. That may be why the shadows remain so compelling. They do not prove lost machines or vanished superhumans. They reveal the distance between what survives and what is gone. They remind you that every monument is partly visible and partly hidden, partly fact and partly silence. And as the last light leaves the gallery, the temple seems to offer no grand revelation. Only stone, only darkness, only the uneasy kindness of not knowing everything. The uneasy darkness begins to widen into the sound of a kingdom under strain. You are standing beyond the temple walls now, where the great order of Angkor reaches into roads, fields, reservoirs, monasteries, wooden houses, and distant provinces. The towers still rise with their calm confidence. The galleries still hold gods and kings in disciplined procession. The moat still reflects the sky. Yet beneath that surface, the sacred machinery is beginning to feel the weight of time. No monument fails in a single breath. It loosens. At first, the changes may seem small. A canal bank breaks more often. A road is repaired later than it should be. A village sends fewer workers than expected. A harvest disappoints. A frontier commander asks for more support. A court faction grows louder in private rooms. The temple remains magnificent, but magnificence can hide fatigue for a long while. That is one of its talents. A mainstream historical fact helps frame the shadow. Angkor did not collapse because one simple disaster struck it like a falling stone. Scholars at institutions such as Stanford, the University of Sydney, and Cambridge have studied evidence for climate stress, political change, warfare, shifting trade patterns, and religious transformation across the later Angkorian period. The decline appears complex, layered, and uneven, not sudden or neat. You feel that complexity in the air. The day is hot, but the heat feels harsher now. Dust lifts from a road used by carts and officials. The scent of dry grass mixes with smoke from fields burned after harvest. Water buffalo moves slowly through cracked mud beside a shrinking channel. A farmer studies the sky with a tired suspicion of someone who has been promised rain before. Drought changes the mood of a kingdom. So does too much rain. Tree ring and sediment studies have suggested that mainland Southeast Asia experienced severe climate swings in the 14th and 15th centuries, including long droughts interrupted by intense monsoon events. Researchers writing in major scientific journals have argued that such extremes could have damaged Angkor's water management network. A system built to guide water can suffer terribly when water becomes unpredictable. The canals know this first. You stand beside one after a dry season. Its bed is exposed in places, ridged with cracked clay. Fish traps sit useless near shallow pools. Reeds lean over stagnant water. Children who should be splashing are carrying jars farther than usual. The great hydraulic landscape still exists, but existence is not the same as strength. Then the rain comes too hard. A storm rolls across the plain with a force that turns daylight green. Water strikes roofs, fields, banks, and temple stones. Channels fill quickly. Embankments soften. A weak point gives way, and brown water tears through like an animal escaping a pen. Workers run with baskets and timber, shouting through the rain. But the flow has already chosen its own path. Water remembers gravity better than kings. The damage may be repaired, then damaged again, then repaired less completely. Maintenance requires labor, authority, food, and confidence. When any of those weaken, the system begins to fray. This is not the end yet. It is the slow multiplication of problems, each one survivable, together, exhausting. You move toward the court, where sacred order has its human face. Officials still receive reports. Priests still perform rituals. Messengers still travel between centers of power. Yet the old certainty feels thinner. A king's command must travel across roads, through provinces, into villages where people are measuring their own hunger against state demands. When prosperity is strong, obligation can look holy. When hardship deepens, obligation begins to look heavy. Perhaps people still obey. Perhaps they obey with less faith. A quirky tidbit from later traditions tells of treasures hidden or removed during troubled times, as if Angkor's wealth slipped into secret places when danger approached. Stories of buried gold, concealed relics, and vanished royal objects cling to many old cities. They're not reliable maps, but they reveal a real human instinct. When order cracks, people hide what they fear losing. The sacred order cracks in more than one way. Religious change moves through the landscape. Theravada Buddhism grows in influence across the region, offering different forms of devotion, merit, monastic life, and spiritual authority. Angkor Wat itself continues as a sacred place, but the older courtly system that joined royal power to grand temple building begins to shift. Faith does not disappear. It changes direction. That can unsettle a monument built for royal eternity. The old temple economy depended on land grants, temple servants, offerings, ritual obligations, and elite patronage. When religious emphasis changes, political priorities can change too. A vast stone temple may still be revered, but new forms of religious practice may not require the same monumental scale. A kingdom that once poured power into towers might begin placing holiness elsewhere, in monasteries, merit, teaching, and simpler acts of devotion. The stones remain. The system around them changes. There is an open, scholarly debate about the role of religious transformation in Angkor's political decline. Some historians see Theravada Buddhism as softening the older divine kingship model and altering labor obligations. Others caution that religion alone cannot explain the shift, especially when climate stress, warfare, economic movement, and regional politics also mattered. The most careful view lets these forces overlap, like shadows in a long corridor. You hear rumors from the west. The kingdom of Ayutthaya rises in power, and conflict with Angkor becomes part of the later story. Armies move through landscapes already strained by water problems and political pressure. Inscriptions grow fewer. Royal centers shift. The old capital's grip weakens. Even if Angkor Wat remains sacred, the imperial world that built it no longer holds the same shape. War rarely needs to destroy everything. Sometimes it only pushes what's already tired. You imagine a road at dusk. Soldiers pass with spears and packs. A cartwheel sinks in mud. A woman watches from behind a house post, silent and expressionless. A monk stands near a shrine, his robe darkened by rain. No one in the scene knows exactly what future historians will call this period. They only know the grain stores, the rumors, the taxes, the raids, and the weather. History is experienced locally before it becomes a theory. In the temple, rituals continue. Lamps are lit. Offerings are placed. Footsteps echo through the galleries. The bas-reliefs still show perfect order, but the world outside is less obedient. That contrast is haunting. Stone can preserve an ideal long after daily life has begun contradicting it. A carved army marches forever while real armies fail, retreat, or change allegiance. A king carved in sandstone does not age. A living kingdom does. The reservoirs silt. The embankments weaken. The court changes. Trade routes shift toward maritime networks, drawing attention and wealth in new directions. Power moves, as power always does, with a calm lack of sentiment. Angkor's sacred center does not vanish overnight, but its role transforms. The great city thins. Wooden houses decay. Roads grow quieter. Fields change hands. Monks remain where officials once hurried. This is not a simple abandonment. It is a long rearrangement. That matters because the word collapse can be too dramatic. It sounds like towers falling in thunder. Much of Angkor's transition was slower and stranger. People continued living in the region. Worship continued. Memory continued. But the immense urban organism that once fed, maintained, and surrounded the great monuments no longer functioned with the same density and authority. You stand again beside Angkor Wat's moat. The water is still. Lotus leaves tremble in the faint wind. The towers rise with astonishing calm, almost unfairly beautiful against a fading sky. They do not reveal whether taxes failed, canals broke, rivals advanced, or prayers changed. They simply endure, wearing decline as silently as they once wore glory. Perhaps that's why the temple feels so unsettling. It outlived the system that made it. The largest temple ever built without modern tools was born from order, command, water, faith, and labor. When those forces shifted, the temple did not vanish. It became something else, less the heart of imperial certainty, more a sacred survivor, a witness, a stone memory standing where a city once breathed around it. Night comes over Angkor. Frogs call from dark water. A monk's footsteps pass through a gallery. The carved king remains seated on his wall, surrounded by an order that no longer rules the earth outside. The sacred mountain keeps its shape beneath the stars, while the kingdom that raised it drifts into shadow, not destroyed in one moment, but slowly loosened from the world. The loosened world grows quieter, and green life begins its patient return. You stand at the edge of Angkor Wat when the imperial voices have faded from the roads. The temple still rises, immense and deliberate, but the great human rhythm around it has softened. Fewer officials hurry beneath parasols. Fewer work crews move with tools and orders. Fewer carts groan along the old paths. The stone mountain remains, yet the city around it breathes more slowly now. Silence does not arrive all at once. It gathers leaf by leaf. The jungle does not conquer in anger. It advances with roots, seeds, shade, moisture, insects, birds, and years. A crack in a wall catches dust. Dust catches a seed. Rain enters the smallest opening. A root follows. The root thickens. Stone shifts by the width of a fingernail, then by a little more. Time does not need to hurry when it has centuries. The air smells of wet bark and moss. You walk along a path where grass grows between old stones. Lizards dart across sunlit patches. Vines hang from branches like loosened ropes. The calls of birds echo in places where officials once measured tribute. Monkeys move through the upper canopy with the shameless confidence of creatures who have no respect for royal architecture. Nature is not impressed by kings. It is not hostile either. It simply continues. A mainstream historical fact gives shape to this softened world. Angkor Wat was never completely forgotten by local Khmer communities, and Buddhist monks continued to use and preserve the temple through later centuries. Scholars from major universities, including Yale and the University of Hawaii, have emphasized that Angkor's history after imperial decline was not empty abandonment. It was continued devotion, changed settlement, altered memory, and quieter forms of care. That truth matters deeply. The forest covers many answers, but it does not erase every human presence. A monk sweeps a threshold at dawn. A family brings offerings beneath the towers. A pilgrim crosses the causeway with flowers wrapped carefully in leaves. A caretaker patches a damaged place with what materials are available. The imperial machine weakens, yet sacred attention remains. You enter a gallery in early morning. The stone floor is cool beneath bare feet. Moisture beads along the wall in tiny, shining points. Bats cling in dark corners above carved gods and warriors. Their dry little movements disturb the air. A monk passes slowly through the corridor, his robe a warm color against gray stone. He does not treat the temple as a lost ruin. He treats it as a living place. His footsteps make the gallery human again. Outside, roots grip broken stones. Not every part of Angkor receives the same care. Smaller temples vanish faster beneath vegetation. Wooden buildings disappear almost completely. Roads sink into wet earth. Ponds fill with silt and plants. Boundaries blur. The jungle is a patient editor, removing what it can and softening what it cannot. Angkor Wat survives more clearly because of its scale, stonework, moat, and continued religious importance. Even survival has conditions. The moat helps protect the temple in unexpected ways. Its wide band of water sets the central monument apart, slowing the full embrace of forest and root. The enclosure remains recognizable when other spaces become tangled and uncertain. Water, once part of sacred symbolism and city function, now becomes a kind of guardian. It reflects the towers while quietly keeping some green pressure at a distance. That is almost tender. A quirky tidbit from later traveler accounts says the temple seemed like a place built by giants, or by a civilization too refined to belong to ordinary history. This reaction appears again and again when outsiders meet Angkor's scale. It tells you less about the builders and more about the visitors. People often mistake their own surprise for evidence of impossibility. The Khmer achievement did not become greater because outsiders doubted it. It was already great. Still, the image of a hidden temple beneath vines became powerful in the modern imagination. People love the idea of stone swallowed by jungle. It feels like a moral lesson, quietly arranged with roots. Pride rises, power shines, time passes, leaves fall, the forest returns. There is something soothing and unsettling in that rhythm, especially when you hear rain dripping from a tower built for eternity. You move beneath a fig tree growing near old masonry. Its roots hang like cords, pale and strong. Some clasp stones with the grip of an old hand. Others trail downward, searching for earth. The tree is beautiful, but its beauty is not gentle to architecture. A living root can become a wedge. A temple wall can become a host. Life feeds on the openings left by time. There is an open scholarly debate about how best to conserve monuments where vegetation has become part of their identity. Some conservation experts argue for removing roots to protect stone stability. Others warn that removing mature growth carelessly can cause collapse where roots now hold disturbed stones together. The question is not romantic. It is practical, delicate, and sometimes heartbreaking. Should the tree stay? Should the wall survive alone? Can both be honored? These are modern questions. Yet the temple has been asking versions of them for centuries. Monks, villagers, caretakers, colonial officials, archaeologists, conservators, and governments have all touched Angkor in different ways. Each group sees a different duty: preserve worship, protect stone, restore form, maintain access, respect memory. At times, these duties agree. At other times, they pull like teams on a cosmic serpent. In the quiet noon heat, the temple sleeps. Tourists are not yet imagined in their future numbers. The loudness of cameras and tour groups has not arrived. You hear leaves shifting, insects calling, and water moving faintly in the moat. In the shade, carved dancers stand with unreadable smiles. Rain has softened their features. Lichen marks some surfaces. Their jewelry remains, delicate and stubborn. They seem to wait without needing rescue. This waiting is not emptiness. It is another form of history. A place can survive by becoming less central. A monument can endure because it no longer consumes the same intensity of state power. Angkor Wat, freed from being the absolute heart of imperial ambition, becomes a sacred remnant, a pilgrimage site, a memory vessel, and eventually a symbol far larger than any single reign. It is no longer only the king's stone vision. It belongs to many layers of time. You pause near a doorway darkened by age. The air inside smells of incense, damp stone, and old offerings. A small flame trembles before an image. The flame is fragile, but its presence changes the chamber. It says that someone has come here with need, gratitude, fear, hope, or habit. The old monument still receives human feeling. That may be as important as any empire. The temple with prayer is not dead. Even if the city around it has thinned, the sacred center continues to gather meaning. Buddhism settles into spaces first shaped by Hindu devotion. Old carvings remain, but new gestures surround them. The temple becomes layered, not replaced. A visitor from one century might recognize the towers but misunderstand the rituals. A visitor from another might recognize the prayers but not the older theology beneath them. That layering protects mystery. It also protects life. At dusk, mist rises near the water. The towers turn dark against a sky washed with pale gold. Birds cross above the central sanctuary in scattered lines. A monk's chant drifts through a corridor, low and steady. It does not sound like triumph. It sounds like continuity. The jungle covers many answers, but it also preserves the mood of not knowing. It hides roads, softens borders, and makes human ambition appear smaller under the leaves. Yet Angkor Wat remains visible, a sacred mountain standing beyond the worst of disappearance. Its stones hold the pressure of roots, rain, devotion, and memory. You understand now that concealment is not always destruction. Sometimes it is protection. The forest did not simply swallow Angkor Wat. It shaded it, framed it, threatened it, and helped turn it into a dream for later eyes. The monks did not simply inherit a ruin. They kept a pulse within stone. The people nearby did not lose all memory. They carried local knowledge through centuries when distant maps knew little or nothing. Night settles across the enclosure. The moat darkens first, then the galleries, then the towers, which become silhouettes against the final light. Somewhere in the trees, an unseen animal moves through leaves. Somewhere inside, a small flame continues to burn. The temple is quieter now, but not empty. It is covered, guarded, altered, and watched. The watched temple waits until new light begins to pass above the trees. You are standing in a later morning, when the world beyond Angkor has changed its clothes, its maps, its languages, and its ambitions. The old towers remain, but the people approaching them now carry notebooks, measuring tools, cameras, survey instruments, and questions shaped by distant universities. Some arrive with reverence, some arrive with pride, some arrive with assumptions that the stones patiently endure. Scholars return with light, not only sunlight, the light of methods, maps, drawings, excavation, aerial survey, conservation science, and hard-learned humility. Angkor is no longer only a sacred place, a local memory, or a jungle wonder described in astonished travel accounts. It becomes a research landscape studied through inscriptions, architecture, soil, water channels, pollen, ceramics, stone decay, and the faint shapes hidden beneath forest cover. The temple becomes visible in new ways. In the 19th century, European explorers and colonial scholars wrote widely about Angkor, often framing it as a rediscovery, even though Khmer communities and Buddhist monks had maintained a living relationship with the site. Later archaeological work by French, Cambodian, American, Australian, Japanese, and other research teams gradually replaced romantic surprise with patient documentation. The story became less lonely and much larger. You walk beside an early surveyor at dawn. He moves slowly with a sketchbook under one arm. The air smells of wax, damp paper, and wet leaves. His boots leave marks in soft earth. He pauses before a tower, looks up, lowers his gaze, and begins drawing lines. The drawing is imperfect, but it is an act of attention. It tries to hold what the eye cannot keep. Nearby, a monk crosses the stones without ceremony. He does not need a sketchbook to know where he is. That contrast matters. Modern scholarship does not arrive in an empty place. It arrives among living memory, worship, politics, and local knowledge. Sometimes it listens well, sometimes it does not. Angkor's modern study is full of brilliance, but also shaped by colonial histories that made local continuity seem like background scenery. The temple has survived many rulers. It has also survived many explanations. A mainstream historical fact anchors this new age of discovery. Airborne laser scanning, known as LiDAR, revealed extensive urban features around Angkor, including roads, mounds, canals, ponds, and settlement patterns hidden beneath vegetation. Research associated with the University of Sydney and Cambodian partners helped show that Angkor was a vast, low-density urban landscape, not merely a cluster of isolated temples and forest. That discovery changed the mood. The jungle was no longer a curtain over a few ruins. It became a veil over a city. You imagine a modern aircraft passing above the canopy. Below it, leaves ripple in the wind. To the human eye, the forest appears continuous, green, secretive, and almost unreadable. Yet the instrument sends pulses of light downward, and some return after touching the ground beneath the trees. Slowly, a buried pattern appears. Lines, mounds, ditches, ponds, roads. Old human order, resting under roots. The past rises without moving. That is the strange beauty of LiDAR. It does not dig with a shovel. It listens with light. It reveals shapes that feet may cross without noticing. A visitor can stand on an old road and see only trees. A survey can show the road continuing in silence for miles. The hidden city has been present all along, but it required another way of seeing. A quirky tidbit belongs here, and it feels almost too modern for ancient stone. Some early visitors assumed the thick forest meant Angkor was a lost city abandoned to oblivion, while recent technology has shown that the greater landscape was far more organized than many expected. In other words, the jungle was keeping a floor plan, and everyone else was late to the meeting. The humor is gentle. The lesson is serious. Technology can reveal hidden evidence, but it can also tempt people into thinking the machine alone understands the past. It does not. The pulses of light give shapes. Archaeologists must interpret them. Historians must compare them with inscriptions. Environmental scientists must study water, sediment, and vegetation. Conservators must read cracks, stains, weathering, and repair histories. Local communities must be heard because places are lived, not only measured. The light is powerful. It still needs human judgment. You walk through a conservation workshop near the site. The air smells of stone dust, paper records, and quiet concentration. Blocks are cataloged. Photographs are compared. Fragments are studied for fit, weathering, and original position. A conservator leans over a carved piece with a brush, moving as carefully as a doctor beside a sleeping patient. Restoration is not simply rebuilding. It is choosing which stones belong where, which repairs should remain visible, how much should be reconstructed. When does protection become invention? When does cleaning remove evidence? These questions are delicate because every intervention changes the future of the monument. Angkor Wat has endured storms, roots, war, worship, tourism, and repairs. Conservation must act without pretending that time can be reversed. There is an open scholarly debate about how to balance restoration, tourism, religious use, and archaeological integrity at Angkor. Some experts prioritize structural stabilization and visitor management to protect fragile surfaces. Others stress the importance of living heritage, local access, and continued worship. The strongest approach must hold stone, scholarship, and community together, even when their needs do not perfectly agree. That balance is not easy. The temple is famous now. Fame brings help, money, attention, and risk. It brings researchers who study with care. It brings visitors who arrive with awe. It also brings footsteps, touching hands, humidity changes, vibrations, trash, commercial pressure, and the quiet erosion caused by millions of admiring eyes attached to bodies. Modern love can be heavy. Ask any ancient staircase. You stand near sunrise with a crowd forming, cameras lift, phones glow, people whisper in many languages. The towers appear in the reflecting pool, dark against a brightening sky. For a moment, everyone becomes still. Even the most hurried traveler seems caught by the same old persuasion of water, stone, and light. The temple is performing again, not for a king, but for the world. Yet behind the image lies research. Scholars have mapped the quarries that supplied sandstone. They have examined canal routes that may have moved blocks from the Kulin Hills. They have studied weathering patterns, inscriptions, sculpture styles, ceramic scatter, and ancient roads. They have asked how labor was organized, how water was controlled, how the city expanded, and why the system later changed. The questions multiply. Good scholarship often does that. Instead of shrinking mystery, it refines it. The old question, how did they build this without modern tools, becomes many better questions. How was stone extracted? Which waterways were used? How were seasons timed? Which specialists controlled measurements? How did temple estates support labor? How did religious change alter use? How did climate stress affect maintenance? How did memory survive in local practice? The truth becomes more intricate, also more human. You enter a research camp in the evening. Maps lie open on tables. Someone points to a line of old canals. Someone else compares soil samples. A Cambodian archaeologist explains a feature that outsiders had misunderstood. A student takes notes too quickly and later regrets their handwriting, which is a small but universal scholarly tragedy. The past returns through collaboration, correction, and patience. This is another kind of excavation, not only of earth, but of assumptions. Earlier storytellers sometimes imagined Angkor as a mystery so vast it could only be explained by vanished races or foreign genius. Modern evidence gives the achievement back to the Khmer civilization that made it. It shows planning, engineering, religious imagination, artistic mastery, and administrative power rooted in this landscape. That is not less wondrous. It is more respectful. The greatest revelations are often corrections. You stand once more before the towers as night gathers. Laser maps, excavation trenches, conservation records, and old inscriptions have all added their light. Still, the temple refuses to become completely transparent. No instrument can fully recover the voice of a quarry worker at sunset, the doubt of an architect, the private prayer of a monk, or the exhaustion of a village laborer sent to serve royal ambition. Science can illuminate the shape of their world. It cannot restore every breath. That limitation is not failure, it is honesty. The scholars return with light, and the light reveals a larger Angkor than the eye once knew. It reveals the hidden city, the water networks, the roads, the quarries, the fragile surfaces, and the long afterlife of worship and repair. It also reveals that wonder survives explanation. The more carefully you look, the more deeply the stones seem to wait. In the last blue hour, the temple stands between knowledge and silence. The instruments are packed away. The maps are folded. The forest resumes its dark breathing. Across the moat, Angkor Wat rises in measured shadow, no longer lost, never simple, and still quietly withholding something from every age that tries to claim it. The temple still watches while the last blue hour settles across the water. You stand at Angkor Wat as the day loosens its hold on the stones. The heat withdraws from the pavements slowly, like a tired animal leaving the shade. The moat becomes darker, smoother, and more reflective. Above it, the towers rise in quiet layers, their edges softened by evening. Nothing hurries here now. Even the birds seem to cross the sky with ceremonial care. The temple does not answer. It observes, after all the measuring, quarrying, carving, ruling, worshipping, changing, hiding, and studying, Angkor Wat remains larger than any single explanation. It is a royal monument, a sacred mountain, a political statement, a work of engineering, a place of memory, and a living symbol. Each meaning is true, but none is complete alone. The temple has survived because it can hold more than one truth without breaking. That is rare. It is also why people return. A mainstream historical fact gives the final image its weight. Angkor Wat is often described as the largest religious monument in the world, and it remains one of the most important archaeological and cultural sites in Southeast Asia. Scholars connected with institutions such as Stanford, Yale, and the University of Sydney have studied its scale, urban context, water systems, and long religious life. Their work shows a monument deeply rooted in Khmer genius, not an accident or fantasy. You look toward the central tower. It stands like a dark thought against the fading sky. Once, this height announced the king's devotion and his claim upon cosmic order. Once, priests moved through spaces shaped by Vishnu's presence. Later, Buddhist worship settled into the same stone, adding gentler layers to older power. The temple did not choose one age and reject the others. It gathered them. As water gathers fallen leaves, that gathering is part of its truth. A monument built for permanence must survive change, or it survives nothing at all. You walk slowly along the causeway. The stones beneath your feet are uneven, warm in some places, cool in others. Thousands upon thousands of feet have passed this way. Royal feet, bare feet, monk feet, worker feet, tourist feet, soldier feet, scholar feet, children's feet. The path has known command and curiosity, devotion and boredom, sacred procession, and someone looking desperately for shade. History is grand. It is also practical. A quirky tidbit still clings to the temple's reputation. Some visitors insist that Angkor Wat feels too perfect to be entirely human, as if the towers must have been placed by hidden masters beyond ordinary history. Yet the deeper wonder is that ordinary human beings, organized through extraordinary systems, did exactly this. They lifted no modern cranes, called down no machines from the sky, and left no need for such inventions. They used land, water, skill, hunger, faith, authority, and time. That is enough to unsettle the mind. You pause where the moat reflects the towers. The image trembles when a small fish breaks the surface. For 1 second, the whole temple shivers in the water, and then becomes whole again. This reflection feels like a quiet lesson. Angkor Wat has always existed in two forms. One is stone, heavy and enduring. The other is image, unstable and carried in human thought. The stone remains, the meaning shifts. There's an open scholarly debate about how fully modern researchers can reconstruct the original experience of Angkor Wat. Some argue that architectural layout, inscriptions, sculpture, and landscape studies allow a strong picture of ritual movement and royal meaning. Others remind us that sound, color, scent, restricted access, lost wooden structures, and vanished ceremonies make certainty impossible. The temple can be mapped, but not entirely re-inhabited. You feel that loss gently? The old colors are gone, or mostly gone. The lamps that once flickered are gone. The royal court is gone. The workers, cooks, boatmen, clerks, priests, polishers, and quarry crews have gone. Their voices are not stored neatly in the walls. They are suggested by marks, patterns, roots, wear, and scale. The temple gives you evidence, but not companionship. Still, something remains close. A chisel line, a worn threshold, a stone joint placed with care, a stair polished by generations of feet. These are not voices, but they are traces of touch. They let the dead come near without pretending they have fully returned. That may be the most honest kind of haunting. You sit beside the water. The air smells of wet stone, lotus leaves, cooling dust, and a faint thread of incense from somewhere inside the enclosure. Night insects begin their steady music. The sound is simple, but it fills the great space completely. Above the towers, the first stars appear. They seem very far away, and yet the whole temple was arranged as if earth and sky could be made to speak. Perhaps they still do, not in words, in alignment, in reflection, in silence, in the slow vertical rise from moat to tower, in the way your own breathing changes when you stand before something that outlives every plan made around it. The largest temple ever built without modern tools was not a miracle in the easy sense. It was more demanding than that. It was the result of a civilization able to imagine on a vast scale, command on a vast scale, and endure labor on a vast scale. It was built from sandstone, but also from rice fields, canals, calculations, devotion, and fear of being forgotten. That fear belongs to kings. It belongs to everyone. Perhaps this is why Angkor Wat still moves the heart. You do not need to be a king to understand the desire to leave a mark. You do not need to be a priest to understand the wish that life might fit inside a larger order. You do not need to be an engineer to feel awe when stone, water, and sky become one patient design. The temple watches because watching is what remains. It has watched ambition rise. It has watched prayers change. It has watched roots press against stone. It has watched scholars shine light over hidden earth. It has watched visitors arrive with tired eyes and leave more silent than they expected. It watches you now, across distance, across language, across sleep. And perhaps the story is not yet complete. The towers fade into darkness, but not into absence. The moat keeps their reflection a little longer, holding the last shape of the day. The air cools around your shoulders. The world becomes softer at the edges. You no longer need to solve the temple. You only need to rest beside it in thought. Let the questions loosen now. Let the stones grow quiet. Let the old roads disappear beneath leaves. And let the water carry away the last bright fragments of daylight. Somewhere beyond the galleries, a night bird calls once, then falls silent. Somewhere inside the temple, a small flame trembles before an image. Steady enough for prayer, fragile enough to be human. You have walked through quarry dust, royal command, city streets, carved stories, water channels, shadowed rumors, and the long patience of survival. Now all of it settles into one calm image. A dark temple, a wide moat, a sky opening slowly above ancient towers. The workers sleep. The king is gone. The stone remains. But even stone does not ask you to stay awake. It only asks to be remembered gently, without fear, without hurry, without needing the final answer tonight. The mystery can wait until morning. It has waited for centuries already, so breathe more slowly. Let the temple recede into the soft distance of the mind. Let the carved figures return to shadow. Let the causeway empty beneath the stars. Let Angkor Wat stand where it has always stood, between earth and heaven, between history and dream, between what human beings can prove and what they can only feel. And as sleep comes nearer, perhaps you understand the quietest truth of all. Some wonders are not meant to close. They remain open, like dark water under moonlight, holding the shape of something vast and reflecting just enough for the heart to follow. And perhaps, somewhere in that reflection, the story is still being built.